Understanding your skeletal system is perhaps the most fundamental investment you can make in comprehending your own physical existence. These 206 bones that form your framework are not merely static supports. They are living, breathing structures that grow, heal, and adapt throughout your entire life. From the moment you drew your first breath as an infant, your bones have been silently working, reshaping themselves in response to every step you take, every weight you lift, every movement you make. Tonight, as you settle into rest, let us explore the remarkable architecture that holds you upright, protects your most vital organs, and quietly manufactures the very blood that flows through your veins. Your skeleton is not just the scaffolding of your body, it is an active participant in your health, a dynamic system that responds to your needs and changes with your circumstances. This journey will take us deep into the microscopic world where bone cells conduct their endless ballet of construction and demolition, building the foundation upon which every aspect of your physical life depends. Far from the dry, lifeless structures displayed in museum exhibits, the bones within your body at this very moment are among the most metabolically active tissues you possess. As you lie here in the quiet of evening, millions of microscopic workers are laboring within your skeleton, tearing down old bone and building new tissue in an endless cycle of renewal and repair. This process, known as bone remodeling, occurs continuously throughout your life, ensuring that your skeletal framework remains strong, adaptable, and responsive to the changing demands placed upon it. Within the seemingly solid architecture of your bones exists a bustling metropolis of specialized cells, each with its own crucial role to play in maintaining the structural integrity of your skeleton. These cellular inhabitants work in perfect coordination, responding to chemical signals, mechanical forces, and the body's ever-changing nutritional status. Their activities are so precisely orchestrated that your bones can simultaneously serve as rigid supports, capable of bearing hundreds of pounds of force while remaining sensitive enough to detect and respond to the subtlest changes in your daily activities. The most industrious of these cellular workers are the osteoblasts, the master builders of your skeletal system. These cells arise from mesenchymal stem cells, the versatile precursors that can differentiate into various types of connective tissue cells depending on the body's needs. When called into action, osteoblasts position themselves along bone surfaces like construction crews, preparing a foundation. Their primary responsibility is the synthesis and secretion of osteoid, the organic matrix that will eventually become mineralized bone tissue. Osteoid itself is a remarkable substance, composed primarily of type 1 collagen fibers arranged in a precise, organized pattern. This collagen framework provides the bone with its tensile strength, much like the steel rebar in reinforced concrete. Interwoven throughout this collagen matrix are various other proteins, including osteocalcin, osteopontin, and osteonectin, each contributing specific properties to the final bone structure. The osteoblasts secrete these matrix proteins in a carefully regulated sequence, creating the optimal environment for subsequent mineralization. As osteoblasts continue their work, they gradually become surrounded by the very matrix they have produced. Once completely encased within the bone tissue, these cells undergo a transformation, becoming osteocytes. This transition marks a fundamental change in their role within the skeletal system. No longer are they primarily builders. Instead, they become the sensors and communication specialists of bone tissue. Osteocytes represent the most abundant cell type within mature bone tissue, outnumbering other bone cells by a ratio of approximately 10 to 1. These cells reside within small cavities called lacunae, scattered throughout the mineralized bone matrix, like residents in tiny apartments within a vast concrete structure. Despite their isolation within these spaces, osteocytes are far from solitary. They extend numerous slender processes through microscopic channels called canaliculi, creating an intricate network that connects osteocytes to one another and to cells on bone surfaces. This cellular network functions as a sophisticated communication system, allowing osteocytes to detect mechanical forces applied to the bone and transmit this information throughout the tissue. When you walk, run, or lift objects, the mechanical stress placed on your bones is sensed by these embedded osteocytes, which then coordinate the appropriate remodeling response. Areas experiencing greater mechanical stress will be reinforced, while regions subjected to reduced loading may be gradually remodeled to redirect resources where they are most needed. The third major cell type within bone tissue serves a seemingly destructive but equally important function. Osteoclasts are the demolition specialists of the skeletal system, responsible for breaking down and removing old or damaged bone tissue. These large, multinucleated cells form when several smaller cells, called monocytes, fuse together, creating cellular giants capable of dissolving even the most mineralized bone matrix. When osteoclasts attach to a bone surface, they create a specialized microenvironment beneath their cell membrane, sealed off from the surrounding tissue. Within this isolated space, the osteoclasts secrete powerful acids and enzymes that dissolve both the mineral and organic components of bone tissue. The process is remarkably precise, allowing osteoclasts to remove specific areas of bone while leaving adjacent tissue intact. This selective resorption is essential for the maintenance of healthy bone architecture and the repair of microscopic damage that accumulates over time. The balance between bone formation by osteoblasts and bone resorption by osteoclasts determines whether your bones become stronger or weaker over time. During childhood and adolescence, formation typically exceeds resorption, allowing bones to grow and increase in density. In healthy adults, these processes remain in equilibrium, maintaining bone mass while allowing for ongoing repair and adaptation. As we age, this balance may shift, with resorption gradually outpacing formation, leading to the gradual loss of bone density that characterizes normal aging. The matrix that these cells work with is far more complex than might initially appear. The organic component, comprising roughly 35% of bone tissue by weight, provides flexibility and tensile strength. Type 1 collagen forms the backbone of this organic matrix, but numerous other proteins contribute specialized functions. Osteocalcin, for instance, helps regulate the mineralization process, while osteopontin plays a role in anchoring mineral crystals to the collagen framework. The remaining 65% of bone tissue consists of mineral deposits, primarily calcium phosphate in the form of hydroxyapatite crystals. These tiny crystals, measuring only a few nanometers in length, are deposited within and around the collagen fibers in a highly organized pattern. The precise arrangement of these mineral deposits gives bone its remarkable compressive strength, allowing your skeleton to support your body weight and resist the forces generated during physical activity. The mineralization process itself is a marvel of biological engineering. Initially, osteoblasts deposit matrix vesicles, tiny membrane-bound structures containing the enzymes and ions necessary for mineral formation. These vesicles serve as nucleation sites where the first calcium phosphate crystals begin to form. As mineralization progresses, these crystals grow and multiply, eventually forming the dense mineral phase that characterizes mature bone tissue. This process is not random, but follows specific patterns that optimize the mechanical properties of the resulting bone. The orientation of collagen fibers and the alignment of mineral crystals are precisely controlled to create a composite material that is both strong and lightweight. The resulting structure exhibits properties that exceed those of either component alone, much like modern composite materials used in aerospace and automotive applications. The blood supply to bone tissue plays a crucial role in supporting these cellular activities. Bones are highly vascularized organs, receiving approximately 10–15% of the body's cardiac output, despite comprising only about 15% of body weight. This rich blood supply is essential for delivering the nutrients, minerals, and chemical signals required for bone metabolism. The vascular architecture of bone is specifically adapted to support the unique requirements of bone tissue. Large arteries enter bones through nutrient foramina, then branch into smaller vessels that penetrate deep into the bone tissue. In compact bone, these vessels run through central canals, surrounded by concentric layers of bone tissue in structures called osteons or Haversian systems. This arrangement ensures that no bone cell is more than a few micrometers away from a blood vessel, allowing for efficient nutrient delivery and waste removal. The blood supply to bone is not merely passive, but actively participates in bone metabolism. Blood vessels can dilate or constrict in response to metabolic demands, increasing blood flow to areas of active bone remodeling. During periods of rapid bone formation or repair, the vascular supply to the affected region increases dramatically, ensuring adequate delivery of the raw materials needed for bone synthesis. Mechanical stress plays a fundamental role in bone metabolism through a principle known as Wolff's Law, formulated by the German anatomist Julius Wolff in the late 19th century.
Some nights, I still wake up thinking about that X-ray. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I've been reading pediatric images at Johns Hopkins for 8 years. I've seen birth defects, genetic anomalies, and conditions so rare they don't have names yet. But nothing prepared me for what I found in room 314 on that October evening in 2023. It was nearly midnight when the emergency department sent up the images. A 7-year-old boy named Marcus Webb had fallen from his bicycle, and his parents were concerned about back pain. Standard protocol lateral and anterior-posterior spine films to rule out fractures. I pulled up the images on my monitor, expecting the usual pediatric presentation. The first image loaded normally. A standard lateral spine view showing the natural curves of a healthy child's vertebral column. Nothing unusual. I clicked to the next image, the AP view, and my coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. There were 2 spines. Not overlapping images, not a technical error, but 2 complete vertebral columns running perfectly parallel to each other. Each spine was anatomically correct, showing 24 vertebrae, proper spacing, normal bone density. The second spine sat exactly 3 centimeters to the right of the first, creating a perfect mirror image. I checked the patient information again. Marcus Webb, 7 years old, no previous medical history, no mention of spina bifida or any developmental abnormalities. I pulled up his intake photos from the ED. A normal-looking child with a bright smile, no visible deformities, moving without difficulty. This was impossible. I called down to the emergency department. This is Dr. Chen in radiology. I need to speak with whoever examined Marcus Webb. Dr. Martinez came on the line. Yeah, cute kid, minor bike accident. Parents said he complained of back pain after the fall, but his exam was completely normal. Full range of motion, no point tenderness, neurologically intact. Did you notice anything unusual about his back? Any visible abnormalities? Nothing at all. Why? I stared at the image again. Two spines, both real, both showing up clearly on the x-ray. I'm going to need a repeat study. Can you bring the family back? Sure, but they just left about 20 minutes ago. I spent the next hour reviewing the images, checking for technical errors, overlapping films, double exposures. Everything was normal, except for the impossible anatomy staring back at me from the screen. I called my attending, Dr. Williams, who came in despite the late hour. He stood behind me, studying the monitor in silence. Finally, he said, "Have you verified the patient identity?" 3 times. It's definitely Marcus Webb. And the exam was normal? Completely. Dr. Williams rubbed his eyes. Well, we need answers. Get them back here first thing tomorrow for a CT scan and MRI. And Sarah, don't discuss this with anyone else until we understand what we're dealing with. The next morning, I called the number on file. Disconnected. I tried the emergency contact. Also disconnected. Medical records checked their system. The Webb family had never been patients at Johns Hopkins. No insurance information, no previous visits, no record of Marcus Webb ever existing in our database. But I had the x-rays. I spent hours going through the emergency department logs from that night. Marcus Webb was listed time of arrival, chief complaint, discharge time. But when I asked the registration staff, none of them remembered checking in a family by that name. The triage nurse who had logged his vital signs had no memory of the boy. Security footage from the ED showed exactly what it should have shown: normal foot traffic for a Tuesday night. But in reviewing hour after hour of tape, there was no sign of a 7-year-old boy with back pain, no anxious parents, no family matching the Webb description. Dr. Williams and I met with the hospital administrator. She listened to our report with increasing concern, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Are you certain these images belong to a patient who was actually here? I pulled up the x-rays again. 2 spines, perfectly parallel, impossible anatomy. The timestamp showed they were taken at 11:43 p.m. on Tuesday night. The technical parameters were all correct. The patient positioning was textbook perfect. Someone took these images, I said. This child exists somewhere. The administrator made some calls. Within a week, our IT department had conducted a full system audit. No evidence of hacking. No signs that the images had been inserted from an outside source. The x-rays were generated by our equipment, in our department, during the time frame I remembered. But Marcus Webb had never been our patient. I kept those images on my personal drive. Some nights, when the department was quiet and I was working late, I would pull them up and stare at those 2 spines. I started wondering if somewhere in the world there was a child walking around with impossible anatomy, living a normal life despite having a second vertebral column that should have made movement impossible. Or maybe I was losing my mind. 3 months later, I was reviewing routine chest x-rays when I noticed something in the background of one image. Behind the patient's spine, barely visible, was a faint shadow, a second spine, running parallel to the first. I checked the patient name, Marcus Webb. But according to our records, Marcus Webb had never existed. The image was dated yesterday.
Ossification, and it represents one of the most precisely coordinated developmental programs in the human body. 2 distinct but complementary pathways guide the formation of your bones during development. The first, known as intramembranous ossification, occurs primarily in the flat bones of your skull and portions of your clavicle. In this process, bone tissue develops directly within sheets of fibrous connective tissue without first forming a cartilaginous template. Specialized cells called osteoblasts aggregate within these fibrous membranes and begin secreting the organic matrix that will eventually become mineralized bone tissue. The process begins when mesenchymal cells within the fibrous membrane differentiate into osteoblasts in response to specific developmental signals. These newly formed bone building cells cluster together to form ossification centers, points from which bone formation will radiate outward as the osteoblasts secrete osteoid, the organic matrix of bone. They gradually become trapped within their own secretions, transforming into osteocytes embedded within the developing bone tissue. Meanwhile, blood vessels begin to infiltrate the developing bone tissue, bringing with them additional osteoblast precursors and the nutrients necessary to support continued bone formation. The mineralization process follows shortly after matrix deposition as calcium and phosphate ions precipitate within the organic framework to form the characteristic hard mineral phase of mature bone tissue. The second pathway, endochondral ossification, is responsible for forming the majority of your skeleton, including all the long bones of your limbs, the vertebrae, and the bones of your pelvis. This process is considerably more complex than intramembranous ossification, involving the initial formation of cartilaginous templates, followed by their systematic replacement with bone tissue. Endochondral ossification begins with the formation of cartilage models that roughly approximate the shape of the future bone. These models are composed primarily of hyaline cartilage, the same smooth, glassy cartilage that covers joint surfaces in adults. The cartilage models grow rapidly during fetal development, both through the division of existing cartilage cells and through the addition of new cartilage tissue to their surfaces. As development progresses, specific regions within these cartilage models begin to undergo transformation. The process typically begins in the center of the cartilage template, in a region that will become the primary ossification center. Here, cartilage cells begin to enlarge and change their metabolic activity, secreting different types of matrix proteins and beginning to calcify their surrounding matrix. The calcification of cartilage matrix creates an environment hostile to the cartilage cells themselves, leading to their death and the creation of small cavities within the cartilage template. These spaces are soon invaded by blood vessels, which bring with them the osteoblasts and osteoclasts that will complete the transformation from cartilage to bone. The invading blood vessels also bring stem cells that will establish the bone marrow within the developing bone. As ossification proceeds, the cartilage template is gradually replaced by bone tissue, proceeding from the center outward toward the ends of the developing bone. However, cartilage is not entirely eliminated during this process. At each end of the developing long bone, regions of cartilage persist, forming what will eventually become the epiphyseal plates or growth plates. These cartilaginous regions are crucial for the continued growth of bones after birth. The establishment of secondary ossification centers marks another critical phase in bone development. These centers typically appear after birth in the epiphyses, the expanded ends of long bones. Like the primary ossification centers, secondary centers begin with the calcification and death of cartilage cells, followed by invasion by blood vessels and bone-forming cells. However, the ossification process in these secondary centers proceeds more slowly and leaves a layer of cartilage between the primary and secondary ossification centers. This persistent layer of cartilage, the epiphyseal plate, serves as the engine of longitudinal bone growth throughout childhood and adolescence. The cartilage cells within the growth plate are organized into distinct zones, each with specific functions in the growth process. The zone closest to the epiphysis contains relatively inactive cartilage cells that serve as a reservoir for continued growth. Below this, in the proliferative zone, cartilage cells divide rapidly, producing columns of cells that extend toward the shaft of the bone. As these columns of cartilage cells move farther from the epiphysis, they enter the zone of hypertrophy, where they enlarge dramatically and begin to alter their matrix secretions. The enlarged cells eventually calcify their surrounding matrix and die, creating spaces that are invaded by blood vessels and bone forming cells from the diaphysis. This systematic replacement of cartilage with bone tissue allows the bone to increase in length while maintaining its structural integrity. The rate of growth at the epiphyseal plates varies throughout childhood and adolescence, responding to both genetic programming and environmental influences. During infancy and early childhood, growth proceeds at a relatively steady pace, with occasional spurts associated with periods of rapid overall development. The most dramatic period of skeletal growth occurs during adolescence, when the coordinated effects of growth hormone and sex hormones drive the pubertal growth spurt. Growth hormone, secreted by the anterior pituitary gland, plays a central role in regulating skeletal growth throughout childhood. This hormone acts both directly on bone and cartilage cells and indirectly through the stimulation of insulin like growth factor 1 production in the liver and other tissues. Growth hormone deficiency during childhood results in proportionate dwarfism, while excess production can lead to gigantism if it occurs before the epiphyseal plates close. Thyroid hormones also play crucial roles in normal skeletal development. These hormones are essential for the normal maturation of bone tissue and the timely closure of epiphyseal plates. Children with hypothyroidism often exhibit delayed skeletal maturation and may fail to achieve their full growth potential if the condition is not treated appropriately. Conversely, hyperthyroidism can accelerate skeletal maturation, potentially leading to premature closure of growth plates and reduced adult stature. The sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, become increasingly important during adolescence. These hormones not only drive the pubertal growth spurt, but also ultimately terminate longitudinal bone growth by causing the epiphyseal plates to ossify completely. The timing of this process varies between individuals and is influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. Girls typically experience their growth spurt earlier than boys, partly due to their earlier exposure to significant levels of sex hormones. Estrogen appears to be particularly important in the regulation of epiphyseal plate closure, even in males. Boys with rare genetic deficiencies in estrogen production or estrogen receptors may continue growing well into adulthood, achieving unusually tall statures. This discovery has highlighted the complex interplay between different hormonal systems in the regulation of skeletal growth. While bones grow in length through the activity of epiphyseal plates, they increase in thickness through a different process called appositional growth. This process occurs at the outer surface of bones, beneath the periosteum, the fibrous membrane that covers the external surface of bones, except at joint surfaces. Osteoblasts within the periosteum deposit new layers of bone tissue on the outer surface, gradually increasing the bone's diameter. Simultaneously, osteoclasts on the inner surface of the bone shaft remove bone tissue, enlarging the medullary cavity and preventing the bone from becoming excessively thick and heavy. This coordinated process of bone deposition and removal allows bones to maintain optimal proportions as they grow, ensuring adequate strength without unnecessary weight. The regulation of appositional growth is closely linked to mechanical loading and hormonal influences. Bones that experience greater mechanical stress develop thicker walls and more robust architecture, while those subjected to reduced loading may become more slender. This adaptive response begins during fetal development and continues throughout life, allowing the skeleton to optimize its structure for the mechanical demands placed upon it. Nutritional factors play crucial roles in normal bone development and growth. Calcium and phosphate are obviously essential as the primary mineral components of bone tissue, but numerous other nutrients are equally important. Vitamin D is required for the absorption of calcium from the intestines and plays direct roles in bone cell function. Vitamin C is essential for collagen synthesis, while vitamin K is involved in the production of several bone matrix proteins. Protein intake is also crucial for normal bone growth, as the organic matrix of bone is composed primarily of collagen and other proteins. Children with inadequate protein intake may exhibit delayed growth and increased susceptibility to fractures. Similarly, deficiencies in trace minerals such as magnesium, zinc, and copper can impair normal bone development and growth. The mechanical environment also influences bone development from the earliest stages. Even in the womb, fetal movements help shape the developing skeleton by providing mechanical stimulation to growing bones. Children who are physically active typically calcify their surrounding matrix and die, creating spaces that are invaded by blood vessels and bone-forming cells from the diaphysis. This systematic replacement of cartilage with bone tissue allows the bone to increase in length while maintaining its structural integrity. The rate of growth at the epiphyseal plates varies throughout childhood and adolescence, responding to both genetic programming and environmental influences. During infancy and early childhood, growth proceeds at a relatively steady pace, with occasional spurts associated with periods of rapid overall development. The most dramatic period of skeletal growth occurs during adolescence, when the coordinated effects of growth hormone and sex hormones drive the pubertal growth spurt. Growth hormone, secreted by the anterior pituitary gland, plays a central role in regulating skeletal growth throughout childhood. This hormone acts both directly on bone and cartilage cells and indirectly through the stimulation of insulin-like growth factor 1 production in the liver and other tissues. Growth hormone deficiency during childhood results in proportionate dwarfism, while excess production can lead to gigantism if it occurs before the epiphyseal plates close. Thyroid hormones also play crucial roles in normal skeletal development. These hormones are essential for the normal maturation of bone tissue and the timely closure of epiphyseal plates. Children with hypothyroidism often exhibit delayed skeletal maturation and may fail to achieve their full growth potential if the condition is not treated appropriately. Conversely, hyperthyroidism can accelerate skeletal maturation, potentially leading to premature closure of growth plates and reduced adult stature. The sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, become increasingly important during adolescence. These hormones not only drive the pubertal growth spurt, but also ultimately terminate longitudinal bone growth by causing the epiphyseal plates to ossify completely. The timing of this process varies between individuals and is influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. Girls typically experience their growth spurt earlier than boys, partly due to their earlier exposure to significant levels of sex hormones, estrogen appears to be particularly important in the regulation of epiphyseal plate closure, even in males. Boys with rare genetic deficiencies in estrogen production or estrogen receptors may continue growing well into adulthood, achieving unusually tall statures. This discovery has highlighted the complex interplay between different hormonal systems in the regulation of skeletal growth. While bones grow in length through the activity of epiphyseal plates, they increase in thickness through a different process called appositional growth. This process occurs at the outer surface of bones, beneath the periosteum, the fibrous membrane that covers the external surface of bones, except at joint surfaces. Osteoblasts within the periosteum deposit new layers of bone tissue on the outer surface, gradually increasing the bone's diameter. Simultaneously, osteoclasts on the inner surface of the bone shaft remove bone tissue, enlarging the medullary cavity and preventing the bone from becoming excessively thick and heavy. This coordinated process of bone deposition and removal allows bones to maintain optimal proportions as they grow, ensuring adequate strength without unnecessary weight. The regulation of appositional growth is closely linked to mechanical loading and hormonal influences. Bones that experience greater mechanical stress develop thicker walls and more robust architecture, while those subjected to reduced loading may become more slender. This adaptive response begins during fetal development and continues throughout life, allowing the skeleton to optimize its structure for the mechanical demands placed upon it. Nutritional factors play crucial roles in normal bone development and growth. Calcium and phosphate are obviously essential as the primary mineral components of bone tissue, but numerous other nutrients are equally important. Vitamin D is required for the absorption of calcium from the intestines and plays direct roles in bone cell function. Vitamin C is essential for collagen synthesis, while vitamin K is involved in the production of several bone matrix proteins. Protein intake is also crucial for normal bone growth, as the organic matrix of bone is composed primarily of collagen and other proteins. Children with inadequate protein intake may exhibit delayed growth and increased susceptibility to fractures. Similarly, deficiencies in trace minerals such as magnesium, zinc, and copper can impair normal bone development and growth. The mechanical environment also influences bone development from the earliest stages. Even in the womb, fetal movements help shape the developing skeleton by providing mechanical stimulation to growing bones. Children who are physically active typically, perhaps the most recognizable category, characterized by their elongated shaft and expanded ends. These bones serve as the primary structural elements of your limbs, acting as levers that amplify the forces generated by your muscles while providing the reach necessary for manipulation and locomotion. The femur in your thigh, the humerus in your upper arm, and the bones of your forearms and lower legs all exemplify this category. Despite their name, long bones are defined not by their absolute length, but by their proportions. The radius in your forearm is classified as a long bone, even though it is considerably shorter than many of the flat bones in your skull. The architecture of long bones reflects their dual role as structural supports and biological levers. Each long bone consists of a central shaft called the diaphysis and two expanded ends known as epiphyses. The diaphysis is composed primarily of compact bone arranged in a hollow cylinder that maximizes strength while minimizing weight. This tubular construction follows the same engineering principles used in modern construction, where hollow cylinders provide exceptional resistance to bending and twisting forces. The epiphyses, in contrast, are composed largely of spongy bone surrounded by a thin shell of compact bone. This spongy bone, also called cancellous or trabecular bone, consists of a three-dimensional network of thin plates and rods called trabeculae. Far from being random, this trabecular network is precisely oriented to follow the lines of stress within the bone, creating an internal scaffolding that distributes loads efficiently while allowing space for bone marrow and blood vessels. Between the diaphysis and each epiphysis lies a region called the metaphysis, which in growing bones contains the epiphyseal plate or growth plate. In mature bones, this region appears as a slight flaring, where the narrow shaft meets the expanded end. The metaphysis represents a transitional zone where the dense, compact bone of the shaft gradually gives way to the more open architecture of the epiphysis. The hollow interior of the diaphysis, known as the medullary cavity or marrow cavity, serves multiple functions beyond simply reducing the bone's weight. In adults, this cavity is filled with yellow bone marrow, consisting primarily of fat cells that serve as an energy reserve. During periods of severe blood loss or illness, this yellow marrow can transform back into red marrow, resuming the production of blood cells when needed. The medullary cavity is lined by the endosteum, a thin membrane containing osteoblasts and osteoclasts that participate in bone remodeling. Short bones, the second major category, are roughly cubic in shape and are found primarily in locations where strength and compactness are more important than leverage or reach. The bones of your wrists and ankles exemplify this category, providing stable platforms for the precise movements of your hands and feet while absorbing and distributing the forces generated during grasping and walking. These bones consist largely of spongy bone surrounded by a thin layer of compact bone, an architecture that provides strength in multiple directions while allowing for the complex joint arrangements necessary for fine motor control. The intricate arrangement of short bones in your wrists demonstrates how these structures work together to create remarkably versatile joint complexes. 8 small bones, each with carefully sculpted joint surfaces, combine to allow your hand to move through an extraordinary range of motions while maintaining the stability necessary for powerful gripping. The trabecular architecture within these bones is oriented to handle forces coming from multiple directions, reflecting the complex loading patterns they experience during hand use. Flat bones constitute the third major category and serve primarily protective and supportive functions. The bones of your skull, ribs, sternum, and pelvis fall into this classification. Despite their name, flat bones are not necessarily thin or simple in structure. The bones of your skull vault, for example, consist of 2 layers of compact bone separated by a layer of spongy bone called the diplo. This sandwich construction provides exceptional protection for your brain while remaining relatively lightweight. The ribs demonstrate another variation of flat bone architecture with their curved shape and variable thickness optimized for protecting your thoracic organs while allowing for the expansion and contraction necessary for breathing. Each rib must be strong enough to protect your heart and lungs from external impacts, while flexible enough to bend without breaking during normal respiratory movements and the occasional cough or sneeze. The final category, irregular bones, includes all those bones that do not fit neatly into the other classifications. The vertebrae of your spine, the bones of your face, and the intricate bones of your inner ear all belong to this diverse group. Each irregular bone has a unique shape that reflects its specialized function within the skeletal system. The vertebrae, for instance, must simultaneously provide structural support for your spine, protect your spinal cord, and serve as attachment points for the complex musculature that controls spinal movement. The internal architecture of bone tissue itself represents one of nature's most sophisticated composite materials. At the microscopic level, compact bone is organized into structural units called osteons or Haversian systems. Each osteon consists of concentric layers of bone tissue called lamellae arranged around a central canal that contains blood vessels and nerves. This organization creates a structure reminiscent of a bundle of drinking straws, with each osteon running roughly parallel to the long axis of the bone. The concentric lamellae within each osteon are not merely repetitive layers, but are carefully engineered structures. The collagen fibers within adjacent lamellae run in different directions, creating a plywood like construction that resists forces from multiple directions. This alternating fiber orientation prevents cracks from propagating through the bone tissue, much like the crossed layers in modern composite materials prevent catastrophic failure. Between the lamellae lie small spaces called lacunae, each housing a single osteocyte. These bone cells maintain contact with each other and with cells lining the central canal through an intricate network of microscopic channels called canaliculi. This cellular network allows nutrients to reach every osteocyte and enables the rapid communication necessary for coordinated bone remodeling. The central canals of osteons, also known as Haversian canals, form an extensive network throughout compact bone tissue. These canals run primarily in the longitudinal direction, but are connected by transverse channels called perforating canals or Volkmann's canals. This vascular network ensures that no part of the bone tissue is more than a few cell widths away from a blood supply, enabling the high metabolic activity necessary for continuous bone remodeling. The organization of compact bone varies depending on its location and function. In the shaft of long bones, osteons run primarily parallel to the bone's long axis, providing maximum resistance to bending and twisting forces. In flat bones, the osteons may be arranged in multiple directions to handle the more complex loading patterns these bones experience. Spongy bone, while appearing less organized than compact bone, actually demonstrates an even more sophisticated adaptation to mechanical loading. The trabeculae that make up spongy bone are arranged along the lines of principal stress, creating an internal framework that efficiently channels forces through the bone while using minimal material. This arrangement follows the same principles used by engineers in designing space frame structures and geodesic domes. The orientation of trabeculae can be modified throughout life in response to changing mechanical demands. Regions of spongy bone subjected to new loading patterns will gradually reorient their trabecular architecture to optimize strength in the new stress directions. This adaptive capability allows bones to maintain optimal strength even as activity patterns change with age or lifestyle modifications. The surface of bones is covered by the periosteum, a fibrous membrane that plays crucial roles in bone nutrition, growth, and repair. The periosteum consists of two distinct layers: an outer fibrous layer that provides attachment points for tendons and ligaments, and an inner cellular layer that contains osteoblasts and osteoclasts. This inner layer, also called the osteogenic layer, is responsible for appositional bone growth and participates in fracture healing. The periosteum is richly supplied with blood vessels and nerves, making it one of the most pain-sensitive tissues in the body. This sensitivity serves an important protective function, as damage to the periosteum typically indicates significant trauma that requires attention. The blood vessels in the periosteum penetrate into the underlying bone tissue, contributing to the rich vascular supply necessary for bone metabolism. Different types of bones serve distinct mechanical functions that reflect their evolutionary origins and current roles. Long bones function as levers, amplifying muscle forces and providing the reach necessary for locomotion and manipulation. The mechanical advantage of these bony levers varies depending on the specific joint and muscle arrangement, with some optimized for strength and others for speed or range of motion. Short bones serve as shock absorbers and force distributors, particularly in weight bearing joints. The arrangement of short bones in your feet, for example, creates a series of flexible arches that distribute your body weight across multiple contact points, while providing the spring like action necessary for efficient walking and running. The trabecular architecture within these bones is specifically oriented to handle the complex loading patterns generated during locomotion. Flat bones function primarily as protective shells and muscle attachment sites. The skull provides a rigid enclosure for your brain, while the ribs create a flexible cage that protects your thoracic organs without impeding respiratory movements. The broad, flat surfaces of these bones also provide extensive areas for muscle attachment, enabling the complex movements of your spine and the powerful contractions of your respiratory muscles. Irregular bones often serve multiple functions simultaneously. The vertebrae, for instance, must provide structural support for your spine while protecting your spinal cord, serving as attachment points for muscles and ligaments, and allowing for the complex movements necessary for spinal flexibility. Each vertebra represents a compromise between these competing demands, resulting in the unique shape that characterizes different regions of your spine. The physiological functions of bones extend beyond their mechanical roles to encompass mineral storage, blood cell production, and endocrine function. The extensive mineral reserves stored within bone tissue serve as a buffer for maintaining blood calcium levels, with bones releasing calcium during periods of dietary insufficiency and storing excess calcium when intake is adequate. This buffering function is particularly important in flat bones and the ends of long bones, where the high surface area of spongy bone provides rapid access to stored minerals. The red bone marrow found within spongy bone serves as the primary site for hematopoiesis, the production of blood cells. This function is distributed throughout the skeleton, but is concentrated in specific locations such as the hip bones, sternum, ribs, and vertebrae in adults. The architecture of spongy bone provides an ideal environment for blood cell production, with its extensive vascular supply and the supportive matrix provided by the trabecular framework. Recent research has revealed that bones also function as endocrine organs, producing hormones that influence metabolism, kidney function, and even brain development. Osteocalcin, a protein produced by osteoblasts, acts as a hormone that regulates glucose metabolism and energy expenditure. This discovery has fundamentally changed our understanding of bone tissue, revealing it as an active participant in whole body metabolism rather than simply a passive structural framework. The integration of different bone types within the skeleton creates a structural system that is both remarkably strong and surprisingly lightweight. Your entire skeleton comprises only about 15% of your total body weight, yet it provides the structural framework necessary to support not only your body weight, but also the additional forces generated during physical activity. This efficiency results from the careful optimization of bone architecture to match mechanical demands while minimizing unnecessary material. The connections between different bones create joint complexes that allow for the coordinated movements necessary for daily activities. The shape and architecture of bone ends are specifically adapted for the types of joints they form, with ball and socket joints requiring different bone geometries than hinge joints or pivot joints. These specialized joint surfaces, combined with the internal architecture that supports them, represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement. As we conclude this exploration of bone classification and architecture, it becomes clear that the diversity of bone forms reflects the complexity of functions that the skeletal system must serve. From providing structural support to producing blood cells, from storing minerals to enabling precise movements, bones have evolved sophisticated architectures that allow them to fulfill multiple roles simultaneously. This understanding of individual bone structure and function provides the foundation for comprehending how these diverse elements combine to form the integrated skeletal framework that we will examine next, beginning with the axial skeleton that forms the central support column of your body. At the very core of your physical being lies the axial skeleton, the central architectural foundation upon which your entire body is constructed. As you rest here in the quiet of evening, this remarkable framework silently maintains its vigilant duty, providing both the structural integrity that keeps you upright and the protective housing for your most vital organs. The axial skeleton forms the vertical axis around which all other skeletal elements are arranged, creating a stable platform from which your limbs can move while safeguarding the delicate neural tissues that control your every breath and heartbeat. The term axial derives from the Latin word for axis, reflecting this portion of the skeleton's role as the central line around which your body is organized. Comprising 80 bones in total, the axial skeleton includes the skull, vertebral column, and thoracic cage. Each component has evolved over millions of years to serve specific protective and supportive functions while maintaining the flexibility necessary for the complex movements of daily life. The human skull represents perhaps the most intricate example of protective bone architecture in the natural world. This remarkable structure, composed of 22 separate bones seamlessly joined together, creates a nearly impenetrable fortress for your brain while providing precisely engineered openings for your sensory organs. The skull's dual nature, serving simultaneously as armor and as a sophisticated housing for delicate sensory apparatus, demonstrates the elegant compromises that characterize biological design. The bones of the skull are traditionally divided into two functional groups: the neurocranium, which encloses and protects the brain, and the viscerocranium, which forms the framework of the face and houses the organs of vision, hearing, smell, and taste. This distinction reflects the different developmental origins and functional requirements of these two regions, yet they integrate seamlessly to form the unified structure we recognize as the human head. The neurocranium consists of 8 bones that form a protective dome around your brain. The frontal bone creates the forehead and the upper portions of the eye sockets, its smooth curves designed to deflect impacts away from the delicate neural tissue within. Behind it, the paired parietal bones form the sides and top of the skull, their gently curved surfaces creating the characteristic dome shape that optimally distributes mechanical forces. The temporal bones, located on either side of the skull, house the intricate mechanisms of hearing and balance within their dense, maze-like internal structure. These bones must simultaneously provide protection for the delicate structures of the inner ear while allowing for the transmission of sound vibrations through carefully positioned openings and membranes. The temporal bones also provide attachment points for some of the most powerful muscles in your body, those that control jaw movement during chewing. At the back of the skull, the occipital bone forms the posterior wall of the cranial vault and contains the large opening called the foramen magnum through which your spinal cord connects to your brainstem. This opening must be large enough to accommodate the spinal cord and its surrounding protective membranes while maintaining the structural integrity of the skull. The positioning and shape of the foramen magnum in humans reflects our upright posture, oriented downward rather than backward as in our quadrupedal ancestors. The sphenoid bone, often called the keystone of the skull, occupies a central position within the cranial base and articulates with nearly every other bone in the skull. Its complex shape, resembling a butterfly when viewed from above, includes a central body that houses the pituitary gland, your body's master endocrine control center. Wing-like projections extend laterally to form parts of the eye sockets and sides of the skull, while numerous foramina provide passageways for nerves and blood vessels traveling between the brain and the rest of the body. The ethmoid bone, though small and largely hidden within the skull, plays crucial roles in both structural support and sensory function. Its delicate, scroll-like projections into the nasal cavity increase the surface area for warming and humidifying incoming air, while its perforated upper surface, the cribriform plate, allows the olfactory nerves to pass from the nasal cavity to the brain. This bone demonstrates how skeletal structures can serve both mechanical and physiological functions simultaneously. The bones of the viscerocranium create the framework of your face while housing the organs of special sensation. The maxillae, or upper jaw bones, form much of the middle face and contain the upper teeth. These bones must be strong enough to withstand the forces of chewing, which can exceed 200 pounds per square inch in the molar region, while remaining light enough not to overburden the neck muscles that support the head. The mandible, or lower jaw, is the largest and strongest bone of the face, and uniquely among skull bones, it is capable of movement. The temporomandibular joints that connect the mandible to the temporal bones are among the most frequently used joints in your body, opening and closing thousands of times each day during speaking, chewing, and swallowing. The mandible's horseshoe shape and robust construction reflect the enormous forces it must withstand during mastication. The connections between skull bones, called sutures, represent one of nature's most elegant solutions to the problem of joining rigid materials. These zigzag joints interlock adjacent bones like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle, creating connections that are both strong and permanent while allowing for slight expansion during growth. In infants, these sutures remain flexible, permitting the skull to compress during birth and expand as the brain grows rapidly during early development. The sutures gradually fuse as maturation proceeds, typically completing this process by middle age. This fusion eliminates the flexibility of youth, but creates an exceptionally strong protective shell for the adult brain. The timing of suture fusion varies among individuals and has been used by forensic scientists to estimate age at death, though modern techniques have revealed considerable variation in this process. Within the skull, the bones are not solid but contain numerous air-filled spaces called paranasal sinuses. These cavities, lined with mucous membrane and connected to the nasal cavity, serve multiple functions. They significantly reduce the weight of the skull while maintaining its strength, and they provide resonating chambers that influence the quality of your voice. The sinuses also help insulate the brain from temperature fluctuations and may serve as shock absorbers during head impacts. The vertebral column represents one of the most remarkable examples of structural engineering in the biological world. This flexible column of 26 bones provides the primary support for your upright posture while protecting the delicate spinal cord and allowing for an extraordinary range of movement. The spine's shaped curvature, unique among mammals, represents a crucial adaptation to bipedal locomotion, distributing weight efficiently while absorbing the shock of each footstep. The vertebral column's architecture reflects a careful balance between stability and mobility, strength and flexibility. Each vertebra is separated from its neighbors by intervertebral discs, fibrocartilaginous structures that act as both cushions and shock absorbers. These discs allow for small movements between adjacent vertebrae that, when combined, produce the spine's impressive range of motion while maintaining the column's structural integrity. The four natural curves of the spine's cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral develop gradually during infancy and childhood as you learn to hold up your head, sit, and walk. These curves are not present at birth. Newborns have a single C-shaped spinal curve similar to other mammals. The development of the characteristic shape parallels the acquisition of upright posture and represents one of the key anatomical features that distinguish humans from other primates. The cervical curve, consisting of the 7 neck vertebrae, develops as infants learn to lift and support their heads. This lordotic curve, meaning it curves forward, positions the head over the center of gravity and reduces the muscular effort required to maintain head position. The cervical vertebrae are the smallest and most delicate of the spinal bones, reflecting their role in supporting the relatively light weight of the head while allowing for the extensive range of motion necessary for visual and auditory scanning of the environment. The first two cervical vertebrae, the atlas and axis, have unique shapes that permit the nodding and rotating movements of the head. The atlas, named for the mythological figure who supported the heavens, has no body and forms a ring that cradles the skull. The axis contains a upward projection called the dens or odontoid process that acts as a pivot point for head rotation. This arrangement allows your head to turn approximately 90 degrees in each direction while maintaining a secure connection to the spine. The thoracic curve, formed by the 12 vertebrae that articulate with the ribs, curves backward to accommodate the rib cage and protect the organs of the chest cavity. These vertebrae are intermediate in size between the smaller cervical and larger lumbar vertebrae, reflecting their dual role in supporting body weight and providing attachment points for the ribs. The thoracic vertebrae have limited individual mobility due to their connections with the ribs, but collectively they allow for the breathing movements and spinal flexion necessary for daily activities. The lumbar curve, perhaps the most critical for human bipedalism, curves forward again to position the upper body over the pelvis and legs. The 5 lumbar vertebrae are the largest and most robust in the spine, reflecting their role as the primary weight-bearing elements of the vertebral column. Each lumbar vertebra must support not only the weight of the structures above it, but also the additional forces generated during lifting, bending, and other activities that load the spine. The intervertebral discs between lumbar vertebrae are correspondingly thick and strong, with the disc between the 5th lumbar vertebra and the sacrum being the largest in the spine. These discs consist of 2 distinct components, a tough outer ring called the annulus fibrosus and a gel-like inner core called the nucleus pulposus. This design allows the discs to resist compression while permitting the small movements between vertebrae that make spinal flexibility possible. The sacral curve is formed by the fused sacral vertebrae, which in adults unite to form a single triangular bone called the sacrum. This fusion reflects the sacrum's primary role as a stable connection between the spine and the pelvis, transmitting the weight of the upper body to the legs through the hip bones. The sacrum's broad, flared shape distributes these forces over a wide area, reducing stress concentrations that could lead to fracture. The final component of the vertebral column, the coccyx or tailbone, consists of 3 to 5 fused vertebrae that represent the remnant of our evolutionary past. While no longer functional for locomotion as in tailed mammals, the coccyx serves as an attachment point for several muscles and ligaments involved in pelvic floor support. Each vertebra, regardless of its location in the spine, shares certain common features while exhibiting regional specializations. All vertebrae consist of a body, which bears most of the weight-bearing load, and a vertebral arch, which encloses and protects the spinal cord. The vertebral arch is formed by 2 pedicles that extend backward from the body and 2 laminae that complete the arch posteriorly. Projecting from each vertebral arch are 7 processes that serve as attachment points for muscles and ligaments. The spinous process extends backward and can often be felt through the skin along the back. 2 transverse processes extend laterally and provide leverage for the muscles that move and stabilize the spine. 4 articular processes, 2 superior and 2 inferior, form synovial joints with adjacent vertebrae, allowing for controlled movement while maintaining spinal alignment. The thoracic cage, formed by the ribs, sternum, and thoracic vertebrae, creates a flexible but protective enclosure for the heart, lungs, and major blood vessels. This bony cage must accomplish the seemingly contradictory tasks of protecting vital organs from external trauma while expanding and contracting with each breath. The solution lies in the rib cage's ingenious design, which combines strong materials with flexible connections and optimal geometry. The human rib cage consists of 12 pairs of ribs, each articulating with its corresponding thoracic vertebra. The first 7 pairs, called true ribs, connect directly to the sternum through individual costal cartilages. The next 3 pairs, the false ribs, connect to the sternum indirectly through shared cartilaginous connections. The final 2 pairs, the floating ribs, have no anterior connections and serve primarily to protect the kidneys and other posterior abdominal organs. Each rib follows a curved path from its vertebral attachment to its anterior connection, creating the characteristic barrel shape of the thoracic cage. This curvature is not merely aesthetic, but serves important mechanical functions. The ribs' curved geometry allows them to swing outward and upward during inspiration, increasing the cage's volume and drawing air into the lungs. During expiration, elastic recoil and muscle contraction return the ribs to their resting position, forcing air out of the lungs. The sternum or breastbone forms the anterior anchor point for most of the ribs and provides protection for the heart and great vessels. This flat bone consists of 3 parts: the manubrium at the top, the body in the middle, and the small xiphoid process at the bottom. The sternum's position makes it readily accessible for certain medical procedures, and its interior contains red bone marrow throughout life, making it an important site for blood cell production. The connections between ribs and vertebrae involve 2 synovial joints for each rib, one between the rib head and the vertebral body, and another between the rib tubercle and the transverse process. These joints allow for the subtle but essential movements that occur with each breath. The costal cartilages that connect the ribs to the sternum provide additional flexibility, allowing the rib cage to change shape without the brittle failure that would occur if these connections were made of bone. The intercostal muscles, which occupy the spaces between adjacent ribs, play crucial roles in breathing and spinal stability. The external intercostal muscles assist in inspiration by lifting the ribs and expanding the thoracic cavity, while the internal intercostals aid in forced expiration. These muscles also help maintain the spacing between ribs and contribute to the overall stability of the thoracic cage. The integration of skull, vertebral column, and thoracic cage creates a central framework that serves multiple essential functions. This axial skeleton provides the structural foundation for upright posture, enables the complex movements necessary for daily activities, and creates protective enclosures for the most vital organs. The engineering principles embodied in this framework, weight distribution, shock absorption, protective enclosure, and flexible support, represent solutions to challenges that have faced vertebrates for hundreds of millions of years. The axial skeleton's design also reflects the unique demands of human bipedalism and our large brain size. The forward position of the foramen magnum, the pronounced lumbar curve, and the broad, flared pelvis all represent adaptations to upright locomotion. Similarly, the large cranial capacity and the robust neck musculature necessary to support the heavy head reflect our species' exceptional brain development. As we consider the remarkable architecture of the axial skeleton, it becomes clear that this central framework provides the stable platform from which the appendicular skeleton operates. The limbs and their associated girdles, which we will explore next, depend entirely on the solid foundation provided by the axial skeleton. Without the stable base of the skull, spine, and rib cage, the sophisticated movements of the arms and legs would be impossible, and the protective functions that safeguard our most vital organs would be lost. Extending outward from the central pillar of your axial skeleton lies the appendicular skeleton, the remarkable framework of bones that grants you the ability to reach, grasp, walk, and manipulate your environment with extraordinary precision. As you settle into rest, these 126 bones that comprise your limbs and their connecting girdles represent the evolutionary triumph of terrestrial vertebrates, structures that have been refined over millions of years to serve the dual purposes of locomotion and manipulation that define human capability. The appendicular skeleton embodies the principle of leverage and articulation, transforming the forces generated by your muscles into the complex movements that allow you to write, embrace, climb stairs, or simply adjust your position as you rest. Unlike the protective and supportive roles of the axial skeleton, these bones serve as the mechanical extensions of your will, translating neural commands into physical action through an intricate system of levers, pivots, and joints. The connection between your axial and appendicular skeletons occurs through two specialized structures known as girdles: the pectoral girdle that anchors your arms and the pelvic girdle that connects your legs. These girdles represent fascinating studies in evolutionary adaptation, each solving different mechanical challenges while providing stable platforms for limb movement. The pectoral girdle, consisting of your clavicles and scapulae, demonstrates an elegant compromise between stability and mobility. Unlike the pelvis, which forms a rigid connection between the spine and legs, The shoulder girdle maintains a more flexible relationship with the axial skeleton, sacrificing some stability for the extraordinary range of motion that characterizes human arm movement. Your clavicles, commonly known as collarbones, serve as horizontal struts that hold your shoulders away from your chest, creating the space necessary for free arm movement. These shaped bones are among the most frequently fractured in the human body, a testament to their exposed position and their role in transmitting forces from the arms to the axial skeleton. The clavicle's distinctive curves are not merely aesthetic. They reflect the bone's adaptation to the complex forces it experiences during arm movement, with the medial curve accommodating the rounded chest and the lateral curve fitting the contour of the shoulder. The scapulae, or shoulder blades, represent one of the most mobile bones in your body, capable of sliding across the posterior chest wall in multiple directions. These triangular, flat bones serve as moving platforms for the shoulder joint, their mobility allowing your arms to reach in virtually any direction. The scapula's complex shape includes several important landmarks. The spine of the scapula provides attachment for muscles that control shoulder blade movement, while the acromion process forms part of the shoulder joint and provides protection for the underlying structures. The shoulder joint itself represents one of the most mobile joints in the human body, formed by the articulation between the head of the humerus and the small, shallow socket of the scapula called the glenoid cavity. This ball and socket arrangement allows for movement in multiple planes, but sacrifices stability for mobility. The socket is far shallower than that of the hip joint, making the shoulder more prone to dislocation but capable of a much greater range of motion. The humerus, the long bone of your upper arm, exemplifies the design principles of appendicular skeleton bones. Its proximal end features a smooth, rounded head that fits into the glenoid cavity, while its shaft provides attachment points for the powerful muscles that move the arm. The bone's distal end is shaped to accommodate the complex hinge joint of the elbow, with carefully sculpted condyles that allow the forearm bones to pivot while maintaining precise alignment. The elbow joint represents a masterpiece of mechanical engineering, combining the stability necessary for weight-bearing activities with the precision required for fine motor control. The joint actually consists of three separate articulations between the humerus and the two bones of the forearm, the radius and ulna. This complex arrangement allows for both the hinge-like flexion and extension of the elbow and the rotation of the forearm that enables you to turn your palm up or down. The ulna, the larger of the two forearm bones, forms the primary hinge joint with the humerus through its prominent olecranon process and the point of your elbow that you can easily feel through the skin. This bony prominence serves as the attachment point for the triceps muscle and acts as a lever that amplifies the muscle's force during arm extension. The ulna's role is primarily structural, providing stability for the elbow joint and serving as an anchor for many of the muscles that control hand and finger movement. The radius, positioned on the thumb side of the forearm, demonstrates the sophisticated adaptation of bone structure to function. Unlike the ulna, the radius is primarily responsible for the rotation movements of the forearm. Its head is designed to pivot within a ring formed by the ulna and surrounding ligaments, allowing the entire hand to rotate nearly 180 degrees. This capability is uniquely developed in primates and represents a crucial adaptation for manipulation and tool use. The hand represents perhaps the most remarkable expression of skeletal adaptation in the human body. 27 bones work in concert to create a structure capable of both delicate precision and powerful grip, from threading a needle to wielding a hammer. The architecture of the hand reflects its evolutionary history as both a locomotor organ and a manipulative tool, with adaptations that allow for the unique human capabilities of precision, grip, and sophisticated tool manipulation. The wrist, or carpus, consists of 8 small bones arranged in 2 rows. These carpal bones, each with its own complex shape, work together to create a flexible joint that can bend, straighten, and move from side to side while transmitting forces from the hand to the forearm. The scaphoid and lunate bones in the proximal row bear most of the weight transmitted through the wrist, while the distal row provides the foundation for the long bones of the hand. The metacarpals, the 5 long bones that form the palm of your hand, demonstrate the principle of graduated specialization. The first metacarpal, which supports the thumb, is shorter and more robust than the others, reflecting the thumb's unique role in opposition, the ability to touch the tip of the thumb to the tips of the other fingers. This opposable thumb is one of the defining characteristics of human hand function and represents a crucial evolutionary advancement that enabled sophisticated tool use. The hip joint represents one of the most stable joints in the human body, formed by the articulation between the head of the femur and the deep socket of the hip bone called the acetabulum. This ball and socket joint provides considerable mobility while maintaining the stability necessary for weight-bearing activities. The acetabulum is much deeper than the glenoid cavity of the shoulder, reflecting the different functional requirements of the hip joint. The femur, the longest and strongest bone in your body, embodies the engineering principles necessary for weight-bearing and locomotion. Its head is set at an angle to its shaft, creating the characteristic neck of the femur that positions the hip joint optimally for bipedal locomotion. This angled configuration allows for efficient weight transmission while providing clearance for the muscles that move the thigh. The shaft of the femur demonstrates several important adaptations to mechanical loading. Its slight forward bow helps distribute the bending stresses that occur during weight bearing, while its hollow construction minimizes weight while maintaining strength. The prominent ridges and tuberosities along the shaft provide attachment points for some of the most powerful muscles in the human body, including the quadriceps and hamstring muscle groups. The distal end of the femur forms part of the knee joint through its articulation with the tibia. The femoral condyles, the rounded projections at the bone's distal end, are designed to roll and slide on the tibial plateau during knee movement, creating the complex motion that characterizes this joint. The knee joint must accommodate the competing demands of mobility and stability, allowing or the swing phase of walking while providing a stable platform for weight bearing. The patella, or kneecap, represents a specialized adaptation that improves the mechanical advantage of the quadriceps muscle. This sesamoid bone, formed within the tendon of the quadriceps, acts as a pulley that increases the leverage of the muscle and protects the underlying tendon from wear. The patella's smooth posterior surface glides against the femur during knee movement, distributing forces over a wide area and reducing wear on the joint surfaces. The tibia, the larger of the 2 bones in the lower leg, serves as the primary weight-bearing element between the knee and ankle. Its expanded proximal end provides a stable platform for the knee joint, while its shaft transmits forces from the knee to the ankle. The tibia's characteristic 3-sided cross-section provides optimal resistance to the bending and twisting forces that occur during locomotion. The fibula, Positioned on the lateral side of the lower leg, serves primarily as an attachment site for muscles and ligaments rather than as a weight bearing element. Despite its slender construction, the fibula plays important roles in ankle stability and provides origin points for several muscles that control foot movement. The lower end of the fibula forms the lateral malleolus, the bony prominence on the outside of your ankle that provides stability for the ankle joint. The ankle joint, formed by the articulation between the tibia, fibula, and talus, creates a hinge that allows for the dorsiflexion and plantar flexion necessary for walking. The talus, the second largest bone in the foot, serves as the keystone of the foot's architecture, transmitting forces between the leg and the foot while allowing for the complex movements required for locomotion on irregular surfaces. The remaining bones of the foot, the navicular, cuboid, 3 cuneiforms, 5 metatarsals, and 14 phalanges, work together to create the foot's characteristic arch structure. The longitudinal arch, running from heel to toe, acts as a spring that stores and releases energy during walking, improving the efficiency of locomotion. The transverse arch, running across the width of the foot, provides additional shock absorption and helps distribute forces across the foot's width. The metatarsals, like their counterparts in the hand, demonstrate graduated specialization based on their functional roles. The first metatarsal, supporting the big toe, is shorter and more robust than the others, reflecting its crucial role in push-off during walking. The central metatarsals are longer and more slender, optimized for their role in weight distribution, while the fifth metatarsal includes specialized features for muscle attachments. The evolution of the appendicular skeleton reflects the transition from aquatic to terrestrial life and the subsequent adaptations to different forms of locomotion. The basic pattern of limb bones, one proximal bone, two middle bones, and multiple distal bones, is conserved across all terrestrial vertebrates, but has been modified extensively to serve different functional needs. In humans, these modifications reflect our unique adaptations to bipedal locomotion and sophisticated tool use. The comparison between upper and lower extremities reveals the functional specialization that has occurred during human evolution. The arms have been freed from locomotor duties and specialized for manipulation, developing greater range of motion and finer control. The legs have become robust, weight-bearing structures, optimized for efficient, bipedal locomotion, sacrificing some mobility for stability and strength. The mechanical principles embodied in the appendicular skeleton leverage, articulation, shock absorption, and force transmission represent solutions to the physical challenges of terrestrial life. Each bone's shape reflects its specific role in these mechanical systems, from the precision engineering of hand bones to the robust construction of leg bones designed to handle multiple times body weight during athletic activities. As we conclude our exploration of the appendicular skeleton, it becomes clear that these bones achieve their remarkable capabilities not in isolation, but through their connections with one another. The joints that link these bones transform them from individual elements into integrated mechanical systems, capable of the extraordinary range of movements that characterize human capability. Understanding how these bones connect and move together through their articulations will be our next journey into the intricate world of human anatomy. The bones of your skeleton, for all their remarkable engineering and adaptive architecture, would remain merely an elaborate collection of rigid struts without the specialized structures that connect them and allow them to move in relation to one another. These connections, called joints or articulations, Transform your skeleton from a static framework into a dynamic system capable of the fluid movements that define human motion. As you rest here in the quiet evening, these numerous joint structures maintain their vigilant readiness, prepared to facilitate every movement from the gentle rise and fall of your chest during breathing to the complex coordinated actions required for tomorrow's activities. Joints represent some of the most sophisticated mechanical solutions in biological engineering, each designed to solve specific challenges related to movement, stability, and force transmission. The human body contains over 300 joints of various types, each carefully crafted through evolutionary processes to serve its particular role in the grand mechanical symphony of human movement. From the immovable sutures of your skull to the freely mobile ball and socket joints of your shoulders and hips, this remarkable variety reflects the diverse functional demands placed upon different regions of your skeletal system. The classification of joints traditionally follows their degree of movement, creating three broad categories that reflect both their structural characteristics and their functional capabilities. Synarthroses are immovable joints, diarthroses are freely movable joints, and amphiarthroses fall between these extremes, allowing slight movement while maintaining considerable stability. This classification system, while useful for understanding joint function, represents a continuum rather than rigid categories, as joints exist along a spectrum of mobility and stability. Fibrous joints represent the most stable end of this spectrum, utilizing dense connective tissue to create strong, largely immovable connections between bones. The sutures of your skull exemplify this type of joint, where the edges of adjacent bones interlock like pieces of a complex puzzle bound together by fibrous connective tissue. These joints provide the rigid connections necessary to protect your brain while allowing for the slight expansion that occurs during growth and development. The syndesmosis represents another type of fibrous joint where bones are connected by ligaments or fibrous membranes across somewhat greater distances. The connection between your tibia and fibula in the lower leg demonstrates this arrangement, with tough, fibrous tissue maintaining the proper spacing between these bones while allowing for the slight movements necessary during walking and weight-bearing activities. This design provides stability while accommodating the minor adjustments that occur with mechanical loading. Cartilaginous joints utilize cartilage as their connecting medium, providing more flexibility than fibrous joints while maintaining considerable strength. The symphysis pubis, where your two pubic bones meet at the front of your pelvis, exemplifies this joint type. Here, a disc of fibrocartilage connects the bones, allowing for slight movement that becomes particularly important during childbirth when the joint can expand to accommodate the passage of the infant. The intervertebral joints of your spine represent perhaps the most functionally important cartilaginous joints in your body. Each intervertebral disc consists of a tough outer ring called the annulus fibrosus, surrounding a gel-like inner core called the nucleus pulposus. This design allows for small movements between adjacent vertebrae while providing shock absorption and maintaining the structural integrity of the spinal column. The cumulative effect of movement at multiple intervertebral joints creates the spine's impressive range of motion. The synchondroses, where bones are joined by hyaline cartilage, typically represent temporary joints that eventually ossify and become immovable. The epiphyseal plates in growing bones exemplify this type, serving as sites of longitudinal bone growth during development before eventually converting to bone tissue and eliminating movement at these locations. Synovial joints represent the pinnacle of joint engineering, providing the greatest degree of movement while maintaining the stability necessary for controlled, coordinated motion. These joints are distinguished by their synovial cavity, a fluid filled space that separates the articulating bone surfaces and provides virtually frictionless movement. The design of synovial joints represents a masterpiece of biological engineering, solving the challenge of providing smooth movement while maintaining joint integrity under the substantial forces generated during physical activity. The articular cartilage that covers the ends of bones in synovial joints represents one of the most remarkable materials in the human body. This specialized hyaline cartilage provides a smooth, low friction surface that can withstand enormous pressures while maintaining its integrity over decades of use. The cartilage matrix consists of collagen fibers embedded in a gel like substance rich in proteoglycans, molecules that attract and bind water to create a resilient, shock absorbing material. The unique properties of articular cartilage stem from its specialized architecture. The surface layer consists of collagen fibers oriented parallel to the joint surface, providing resistance to shear forces. Deeper layers contain fibers oriented perpendicular to the surface, anchoring the cartilage to the underlying bone. This layered construction, combined with the cartilage's high water content, allows it to compress under load and then return to its original shape when the load is removed. Synovial fluid, the lubricant that fills the joint cavity, possesses remarkable properties that enable nearly frictionless joint movement. This viscous fluid contains hyaluronic acid, proteins, and other molecules that provide both lubrication and nutrition for the avascular articular cartilage. The fluid's viscosity changes with the rate of movement remaining thick during slow movements to provide cushioning and becoming thinner during rapid movements to reduce resistance. The joint capsule that encloses synovial joints consists of two distinct layers, each serving specific functions. The outer fibrous layer provides structural strength and helps maintain joint stability, while the inner synovial membrane secretes synovial fluid and helps maintain the joint's internal environment. This membrane contains specialized cells that not only produce synovial fluid, but also remove waste products and debris from the joint cavity. Saddle joints, found between your thumb metacarpal and wrist, provide a unique combination of movements that enable the thumb's remarkable versatility. The saddle-shaped articulating surfaces allow movement in two planes while providing the stability necessary for forceful gripping and precise manipulation. Gliding joints permit small sliding movements between relatively flat bone surfaces. The joints between your wrist bones and between the vertebral processes in your spine exemplify this type. While individual movements are limited, the cumulative effect of movement at multiple gliding joints can produce substantial overall motion as seen in the complex movements of your wrist and spine. The stability of joints depends on three primary factors: the shape of the articulating surfaces, the strength and arrangement of the surrounding ligaments, and the tension provided by muscles crossing the joint. Different joints emphasize these factors to different degrees based on their functional requirements. The hip joint relies heavily on its deep socket and strong ligaments, while the shoulder joint depends more on muscular support due to its shallow socket. Ligaments, the dense connective tissue structures that connect bone to bone, play crucial roles in joint stability and movement guidance. These structures not only prevent excessive movement that could damage the joint, but also help guide movement along proper pathways. Some ligaments remain taut throughout the joint's range of motion, providing constant stability, while others become tight only at the extremes of movement, preventing excessive motion while allowing normal function. The proprioceptive function of joints, their ability to sense position and movement, depends on specialized receptors within joint capsules, ligaments, and surrounding muscles. These mechanoreceptors continuously provide information about joint position and movement to your nervous system, enabling the precise coordination necessary for smooth, controlled movement. This sensory feedback occurs below the level of conscious awareness, but is essential for normal joint function and movement control. Joint movements are described using standardized terminology that reflects the direction and nature of the motion. Flexion refers to movements that decrease the angle between two bones, while extension increases this angle. Abduction moves a part away from the body's midline, while adduction brings it closer. Rotation involves movement around the long axis of a bone, and circumduction combines several movements to produce a circular motion. More specialized movements have their own terms. Dorsiflexion and plantar flexion describe ankle movements. Supination and pronation refer to forearm rotation, and inversion and eversion describe foot movements. This precise terminology allows healthcare providers and researchers to communicate clearly about joint function and dysfunction. The trade-off between joint mobility and stability represents one of the fundamental compromises in skeletal design. Highly mobile joints like the shoulder are more susceptible to dislocation and injury, while very stable joints, like those in the pelvis, sacrifice mobility for security. This relationship is not fixed. Joint stability can be influenced by muscle strength, ligament integrity, and movement patterns developed through activity and training. Age-related changes in joints reflect both the accumulated wear of decades of use and the biological processes of aging. Articular cartilage gradually thins and loses some of its resilience. Synovial fluid may become less viscous, and joint capsules may lose some of their flexibility. However, regular appropriate movement can help maintain joint function and slow age-related changes, highlighting the importance of the principle use it or lose it in joint health. The remarkable diversity of joint types and their specialized functions demonstrate the sophisticated engineering principles that govern human movement. From the massive forces handled by weight-bearing joints to the precise movements enabled by small joints in the hands and feet, each joint represents a refined solution to specific mechanical challenges. The integration of these joints into coordinated movement patterns creates the fluid, purposeful movements that characterize human activity. Understanding joint structure and function reveals how these mechanical connections transform the rigid elements of your skeleton into an integrated system capable of supporting not just static posture, but dynamic movement in three-dimensional space. The forces generated by your muscles, transmitted through these joint systems, create the movements that will allow you to rise from rest and engage with your environment. This mechanical framework, with its ingenious solutions to the challenges of mobility and stability, provides the foundation for examining how your skeletal system supports and enables the complex patterns of human movement that we will explore next. Your skeleton functions as an elaborate system of levers, pulleys, and mechanical linkages that transforms the linear forces generated by your muscles into the complex, coordinated movements that define human capability. As you lie here and rest, this mechanical framework remains poised to amplify and direct muscular forces with remarkable efficiency and converting the biochemical energy of muscle contraction into the purposeful movements that will carry you through tomorrow's activities. The engineering principles embodied in your skeletal system rival those found in the most sophisticated mechanical devices, yet they operate with a precision and adaptability that no artificial system has yet achieved. The concept of bones as levers provides fundamental insight into how your body generates and controls movement. In mechanical terms, a lever consists of a rigid bar that pivots around a fixed point called a fulcrum, with effort applied at one location to move a load at another. Your bones serve as the rigid bars, your joints function as fulcrums, and your muscles provide the effort needed to move various loads, whether that load is the weight of your own body parts or external objects you wish to manipulate. The human body utilizes all three classes of levers, each offering different mechanical advantages and serving specific functional purposes. First class levers, where the fulcrum lies between the effort and the load, are exemplified by the action of your neck muscles extending your head. The atlanto-occipital joint serves as the fulcrum, your neck muscles provide the effort, and the weight of your head constitutes the load. This arrangement allows relatively small muscles to balance and move the considerable weight of your head with precision and efficiency. The mechanical advantage of this lever system becomes apparent when you consider the forces involved. Your head weighs approximately 10 to 12 pounds, yet the muscles at the back of your neck can maintain its position against gravity with relatively modest effort. The lever arrangement amplifies the force generated by these muscles, allowing them to counteract the gravitational forces acting on your head's center of mass, which lies forward of the pivot point at your atlanto-occipital joint. Second class levers, where the load lies between the fulcrum and the effort, provide the greatest mechanical advantage and are exemplified by the action of rising onto your toes. The ball of your foot serves as the fulcrum, your body weight constitutes the load, and your calf muscles provide the effort through their attachment to your heel via the Achilles tendon. This arrangement allows your calf muscles to lift your entire body weight, demonstrating how lever mechanics can multiply force output. The efficiency of this system becomes particularly evident during activities like jumping or running, where your calf muscles must generate forces several times your body weight to propel you upward or forward. The lever arrangement of your foot and ankle enables muscles that constitute only a small percentage of your total body mass to generate the tremendous forces necessary for explosive movements. Third class levers, the most common type in your body, place the effort between the fulcrum and the load. While these levers provide no mechanical advantage in terms of force multiplication, they excel at producing speed and range of motion. Your biceps muscle exemplifies this arrangement. Your elbow joint serves as the fulcrum. Your biceps applies effort close to the joint, and the load is whatever your hand is holding or the weight of your forearm itself. This lever configuration allows small muscle contractions to produce large movements at the hand, enabling the rapid, precise movements necessary for tasks ranging from writing to throwing. The trade-off is that your biceps must generate forces greater than the load being lifted, but the system compensates by allowing small muscle movements to produce large hand movements with considerable speed. The shapes of your bones have been optimized through evolutionary processes to serve their mechanical functions while minimizing weight and maximizing strength. The hollow construction of long bones demonstrates this optimization principle perfectly. The femur, your body's longest and strongest bone, weighs only about 10% of what it would if it were solid, yet its hollow cylindrical design provides exceptional resistance to bending and twisting forces. This hollow design, follows engineering principles well understood in construction and manufacturing. A hollow cylinder provides nearly the same bending strength as a solid cylinder of the same outer diameter while using far less material. In your femur, this design allows the bone to support loads exceeding 10 times your body weight during activities like jumping, while remaining light enough to be moved efficiently by your leg muscles. The distribution of bone tissue within your skeleton reflects the specific loading patterns each bone experiences. Areas subjected to high compressive forces develop dense, compact bone, while regions experiencing primarily tensile stresses may have different architectural arrangements. The trabecular bone within the ends of long bones aligns itself along the lines of principal stress, creating an internal framework that efficiently channels forces while using minimal material. Your bones continuously adapt their architecture in response to the mechanical demands placed upon them, following a principle known as Wolff's Law. This adaptive capability allows your skeleton to optimize its strength and structure based on your activity patterns, lifestyle, and occupation. Athletes who engage in different sports develop characteristically different bone architectures that reflect their specific training demands. Weight bearing exercises stimulate bone formation more effectively than non weight bearing activities, as bones respond most strongly to dynamic loading with impact components. Running, jumping, and resistance training create the types of mechanical stimuli that promote bone density increases, while activities like swimming, though excellent for cardiovascular fitness and muscle strength, provide less stimulus for bone adaptation due to the buoyant environment. The relationship between skeletal geometry and athletic performance reveals how bone architecture can influence movement, efficiency, and injury risk. Athletes in sports requiring rapid acceleration and deceleration, such as basketball or soccer, typically develop greater bone density in their legs and spine compared to athletes in sports with more uniform loading patterns. The specific adaptations reflect not just the forces involved, but also the rates at which those forces are applied. Gymnasts who subject their bones to high impact forces from early ages often develop remarkably dense bone tissue that persists throughout their lives. The repeated loading from landing impacts and the varied directional forces from different gymnastic movements create comprehensive skeletal adaptations that provide protection against fractures both during their athletic careers and in later life. Conversely, sports that involve repetitive movements in limited planes of motion may create imbalanced adaptations. Tennis players, for instance, often show increased bone density in their dominant arm compared to their non dominant arm, reflecting the asymmetrical loading patterns of their sport. While these adaptations enhance performance in sport specific movements, they may also create areas of relative weakness in movement patterns that differ from training activities. The timing of skeletal adaptation to exercise reveals important insights about bone biology. Unlike muscle tissue, which can adapt to training stimuli relatively quickly, bone tissue requires months to years to show significant architectural changes. The cellular processes of bone remodeling the coordinated activity of bone building osteoblasts and bone resorbing osteoclasts operate on timescales measured in weeks, months, making skeletal adaptation a gradual, long term process. This slow adaptation timeline has important implications for injury prevention and training progression. Rapid increases in training intensity or volume can overwhelm the bone's adaptive capacity, leading to stress injuries before the skeleton has had time to strengthen appropriately. The concept of progressive overload, fundamental to effective training, must account for the bone's slower adaptation rate compared to muscles and cardiovascular systems. The integration of skeletal and muscular systems in producing movement extends beyond simple mechanical relationships to encompass complex feedback mechanisms that coordinate muscle activation patterns with joint mechanics. Proprioceptors within joints, ligaments, and muscles continuously provide information about joint position and movement velocity to the nervous system, enabling the precise coordination necessary for smooth, efficient movement. These sensory feedback systems allow your nervous system to adjust muscle activation patterns in real time based on changing mechanical conditions. When walking on uneven surfaces, for instance, proprioceptive feedback enables rapid adjustments in muscle activation to maintain balance and prevent injury, demonstrating the sophisticated integration of skeletal and neural systems in movement control. The efficiency of human movement depends not only on individual joint mechanics, but also on the coordination of movement across multiple joints in kinetic chains. When throwing a ball, for example, forces generated by your legs are transmitted through your spine to your shoulders, arms, and finally to your hand. The skeletal system serves as the structural framework that enables this force transmission, while the joints allow for the sequential activation that maximizes velocity and accuracy. Understanding these kinetic chains reveals why skeletal injuries in one location can affect movement patterns throughout the body. A limitation in ankle mobility, for instance, can alter knee and hip mechanics during walking, potentially leading to compensatory stress patterns that affect the spine and shoulders. This interconnected nature of skeletal function emphasizes the importance of considering the entire kinetic chain when analyzing movement efficiency or addressing movement related problems. Beyond its role as the mechanical framework for movement, your skeleton serves as a sophisticated protective system, safeguarding your most vital organs from the hazards of daily life and the occasional traumas that are inevitable in an active existence. As you rest here safely, your skeletal armor maintains its silent vigil, providing multiple layers of protection that have evolved over millions of years to shield the delicate tissues upon which your life depends. This protective function represents one of the skeleton's most fundamental roles, one that operates continuously and largely unnoticed until circumstances test its capabilities. The human skull exemplifies the principle of protective bone architecture, creating a nearly impenetrable fortress around your brain while maintaining the structural efficiency necessary to avoid overburdening your neck muscles. The skull's curved geometry distributes impact forces over wide areas, preventing stress concentrations that could lead to fracture. This dome-like construction follows the same engineering principles used in architectural domes and pressure vessels, where curved surfaces provide exceptional strength while using minimal material. The thickness of skull bones varies strategically across different regions, with thicker bone in areas most likely to experience impacts and thinner bone where space constraints or other functional requirements take precedence. The frontal and parietal bones, which form the front and top of your skull, are relatively thick and robust, reflecting their exposure to potential impacts during falls or collisions. The temporal bones, while thinner in some areas to accommodate the structures of hearing, include dense petrous portions that protect the delicate inner ear mechanisms. The skull's protective strategy extends beyond simple mechanical strength to include sophisticated energy absorption mechanisms. The sutures that connect skull bones can absorb energy during impacts by allowing slight deformation before returning to their original positions. In severe impacts, these sutures may separate slightly, dissipating energy that might otherwise be transmitted to the brain tissue within. The internal architecture of skull bones contributes significantly to their protective function. The diplo, the spongy bone sandwiched between inner and outer layers of compact bone, acts as a shock absorber while reducing the skull's weight. This construction creates a composite material that combines the strength of the outer compact bone layers with the energy absorbing properties of the inner spongy bone. Your rib cage represents a masterpiece of protective engineering, creating a flexible cage that safeguards your heart and lungs while accommodating the expansion and contraction necessary for breathing. The curved geometry of individual ribs provides structural strength while allowing for the elastic deformation that occurs with each breath. This flexibility is crucial. A rigid protective structure would prevent the respiratory movements essential for life. The ribcage's protective strategy balances several competing requirements. The ribs must be strong enough to protect vital organs from external impacts, flexible enough to allow breathing movements, and light enough to minimize the energy cost of respiratory muscles. The solution involves ribs that are relatively thin but curved for strength, connected to the spine and sternum through joints that allow controlled movement while maintaining structural integrity. The arrangement of ribs creates zones of different protection levels that reflect the varying vulnerabilities of underlying organs. The upper ribs, which protect the heart and great vessels, are shorter and more horizontal, creating a more rigid protective cage around these critical structures. The lower ribs are longer and more oblique, providing protection for the liver, spleen, and kidneys while allowing greater flexibility for the movements of the diaphragm and abdominal muscles. The vertebral column provides protection for your spinal cord through a series of bony rings that completely enclose this vital neural pathway. The vertebral foramen, the opening through which the spinal cord passes, is sized to provide adequate space for the cord and its protective membranes while maintaining maximal bone strength. The laminae and pedicles that form these protective rings are shaped and positioned to resist the forces that could compress or damage the spinal cord. The protection provided by vertebrae extends beyond simple enclosure to include sophisticated shock absorption mechanisms. The intervertebral discs act as hydraulic shock absorbers, distributing loads and absorbing impacts that could otherwise be transmitted directly to the spinal cord. The gel-like nucleus pulposus within each disc can compress under load and return to its original shape when the load is removed, providing cushioning for both the vertebrae and the neural tissues they protect. The natural curves of your spine contribute significantly to its protective function by distributing loads efficiently and absorbing the shock of impacts during walking, running, or jumping. These curves create a spring-like structure that can compress and extend, dissipating energy that might otherwise be transmitted as harmful vibrations to the brain and other sensitive organs. The hollow design of long bones, while primarily an adaptation for mechanical efficiency, also contributes to their protective capabilities. The femur's hollow construction allows it to bend slightly under extreme loads rather than failing catastrophically, potentially preventing complete fractures that would be more likely in a solid bone design. This flexibility, combined with the bone's impressive strength, provides protection for the soft tissues and blood vessels that run alongside these bones. The pelvis demonstrates how protective architecture can serve multiple simultaneous functions. Its bowl-like shape creates a protective cavity for reproductive organs, portions of the digestive system, and the urinary bladder, while simultaneously serving as the foundation for upright posture and the attachment point for powerful leg muscles. The thick, robust construction of pelvic bones reflects their role in protecting organs while supporting body weight and withstanding the forces of locomotion. Your skeletal system's protective capabilities extend beyond individual bones to encompass integrated protective strategies that involve coordination between multiple skeletal elements. The thoracolumbar fascia, while not bone itself, works with the ribs and vertebrae to create a comprehensive protective system for the organs of the posterior abdominal cavity. This demonstrates how protection often involves not just individual bones, but entire regional systems working in coordination. The distribution of protective bone architecture reflects evolutionary adaptations to common injury patterns and environmental hazards. Areas of high injury risk, such as the shins and forearms, which are frequently exposed to impacts, have developed robust bone construction and strategic muscle coverage. The subcutaneous location of the tibia along the front of your lower leg, while potentially vulnerable to direct impacts, is mitigated by the bone's strong construction and the protective reflexes that tend to shield this area during falls. The aging process affects the skeleton's protective capabilities, with changes in bone density and architecture potentially compromising the protective function over time. However, the skeleton's adaptive nature means that appropriate loading through physical activity can help maintain protective capabilities well into advanced age. The principle of use it or lose it applies not only to the skeleton's mechanical functions, but also to its protective roles. Modern lifestyle factors can influence the skeleton's protective adaptations, with reduced physical activity potentially compromising bone density and structural integrity. Conversely, appropriate exercise throughout life can enhance the skeleton's protective capabilities by maintaining bone density and optimizing bone architecture. This highlights the importance of viewing skeletal protection as an active, adaptable system rather than a static structural feature. The skeleton's protective functions integrate seamlessly with its other roles, demonstrating the efficiency of biological design. The same bones that protect vital organs also serve as levers for movement, storage sites for minerals, and factories for blood cell production. This multifunctional design represents millions of years of evolutionary optimization, creating structures that excel at multiple tasks simultaneously. Understanding the skeleton's protective functions reveals the remarkable engineering that has evolved to safeguard the delicate biological processes that sustain life. From the microscopic architecture of individual bones to the integrated protective systems that span multiple skeletal regions, your skeleton provides a comprehensive defense system that operates continuously and adapts throughout life. This protective framework creates the safe environment within which your body's chemical processes can function reliably, maintaining the delicate balance of substances and reactions that we will explore as we examine the skeleton's role in your body's chemical homeostasis. Within the seemingly solid architecture of your bones lies one of the most sophisticated chemical storage and regulation systems in your body. As you rest here in the quiet of evening, your skeleton is actively participating in maintaining the precise chemical balance that keeps every cell in your body functioning optimally. Far from being merely structural supports, your bones serve as vast mineral reservoirs, carefully managed depositories that store and release essential elements according to your body's moment to moment needs. Your skeleton contains approximately 99% of your body's calcium, making it the primary repository for this critical mineral. This calcium storage represents roughly 1 to 1.5 kilograms of your total body weight, stored primarily in the form of hydroxyapatite crystals interwoven throughout the bone matrix. This enormous reserve serves as a buffer against fluctuations in dietary calcium intake and metabolic demands, ensuring that calcium dependent processes can continue uninterrupted even when dietary supplies are inadequate. The importance of calcium extends far beyond bone structure itself. This mineral plays essential roles in muscle contraction, nerve transmission, blood clotting, and cellular signaling throughout your body. Every heartbeat depends on calcium ions flowing into cardiac muscle cells. Every thought requires calcium mediated neurotransmitter release, and every muscle movement involves calcium regulated interactions between protein filaments. The maintenance of blood calcium levels within an extremely narrow range, approximately 8.5 to 10.5 milligrams per deciliter, is so critical that your body will sacrifice bone strength to maintain these levels if necessary. The skeleton's role as a phosphate reservoir is equally important, but perhaps less widely appreciated. Phosphate ions are essential components of DNA, RNA, ATP, and numerous other molecules critical for cellular metabolism and energy storage. Your bones contain approximately 85% of your body's phosphate, stored alongside calcium in the mineral matrix. The regulation of phosphate levels involves many of the same mechanisms that control calcium, reflecting the interconnected nature of these mineral systems. The process by which bones release and store minerals involves a delicate balance between bone formation and bone resorption, mediated by the cellular activities we explored in earlier chapters. Osteoclasts, the bone resorbing cells, can rapidly mobilize calcium and phosphate from bone tissue when blood levels begin to fall. This process involves the secretion of acids and enzymes that dissolve the mineral matrix, releasing stored ions into the bloodstream within minutes to hours of hormonal stimulation. The aging process affects the skeleton's protective capabilities, with changes in bone density and architecture potentially compromising the protective function over time. However, the skeleton's adaptive nature means that appropriate loading through physical activity can help maintain protective capabilities well into advanced age. The principle of use it or lose it applies not only to the skeleton's mechanical functions, but also to its protective roles. Modern lifestyle factors can influence the skeleton's protective adaptations, with reduced physical activity potentially compromising bone density and structural integrity. Conversely, appropriate exercise throughout life can enhance the skeleton's protective capabilities by maintaining bone density and optimizing bone architecture. This highlights the importance of viewing skeletal protection as an active, adaptable system rather than a static structural feature. The skeleton's protective functions integrate seamlessly with its other roles, demonstrating the efficiency of biological design. The same bones that protect vital organs also serve as levers for movement, storage sites for minerals, and factories for blood cell production. This multifunctional design represents millions of years of evolutionary optimization, creating structures that excel at multiple tasks simultaneously. Understanding the skeleton's protective functions reveals the remarkable engineering that has evolved to safeguard the delicate biological processes that sustain life. From the microscopic architecture of individual bones to the integrated protective systems that span multiple skeletal regions, your skeleton provides a comprehensive defense system that operates continuously and adapts throughout life. This protective framework creates the safe environment within which your body's chemical processes can function reliably, maintaining the delicate balance of substances and reactions that we will explore as we examine the skeleton's role in your body's chemical homeostasis. Within the seemingly solid architecture of your bones lies one of the most sophisticated chemical storage and regulation systems in your body. As you rest here in the quiet of evening, your skeleton is actively participating in maintaining the precise chemical balance that keeps every cell in your body functioning optimally. Far from being merely structural supports, your bones serve as vast mineral reservoirs, carefully managed depositories that store and release essential elements according to your body's moment to moment needs. Your skeleton contains approximately 99% of your body's calcium, making it the primary repository for this critical mineral. This calcium storage represents roughly 1 to 1.5 kilograms of your total body weight, stored primarily in the form of hydroxyapatite crystals interwoven throughout the bone matrix. This enormous reserve serves as a buffer against fluctuations in dietary calcium intake and metabolic demands, ensuring that calcium dependent processes can continue uninterrupted even when dietary supplies are inadequate. The importance of calcium extends far beyond bone structure itself. This mineral plays essential roles in muscle contraction, nerve transmission, blood clotting, and cellular signaling throughout your body. Every heartbeat depends on calcium ions flowing into cardiac muscle cells. Every thought requires calcium mediated neurotransmitter release, and every muscle movement involves calcium regulated interactions between protein filaments. The maintenance of blood calcium levels within an extremely narrow range, approximately 8.5 to 10.5 milligrams per deciliter, is so critical that your body will sacrifice bone strength to maintain these levels if necessary. The skeleton's role as a phosphate reservoir is equally important, but perhaps less widely appreciated. Phosphate ions are essential components of DNA, RNA, ATP, and numerous other molecules critical for cellular metabolism and energy storage. Your bones contain approximately 85% of your body's phosphate, stored alongside calcium in the mineral matrix. The regulation of phosphate levels involves many of the same mechanisms that control calcium, reflecting the interconnected nature of these mineral systems. The process by which bones release and store minerals involves a delicate balance between bone formation and bone resorption, mediated by the cellular activities we explored in earlier chapters. Osteoclasts, the bone resorbing cells, can rapidly mobilize calcium and phosphate from bone tissue when blood levels begin to fall. This process involves the secretion of acids and enzymes that dissolve the mineral matrix, releasing stored ions into the bloodstream within minutes to hours of hormonal stimulation. Deep within the hollow spaces of your bones operates one of the most remarkable manufacturing facilities in your body, the bone marrow, a soft tissue that produces the billions of blood cells required to sustain life. As you rest here peacefully, this hidden factory works tirelessly, generating approximately 200 billion red blood cells, 10 billion white blood cells, and 400 billion platelets every single day. This production occurs within the protected confines of your skeleton, where specialized stem cells give rise to all the cellular components of your blood through an intricate process known as hematopoiesis. The bone marrow exists in two distinct forms, each serving different functions and occupying different locations within your skeleton. Red bone marrow, the active blood producing tissue, appears red due to its rich blood supply and high concentration of developing red blood cells. This marrow contains the stem cells and supporting structures necessary for blood cell production, creating a microenvironment perfectly suited for the complex processes of cellular development and differentiation. Yellow bone marrow, in contrast, consists primarily of fat cells and serves as an energy reserve rather than an active site of blood production. This marrow can reconvert to red marrow if the body's demand for blood cells increases dramatically, such as during severe blood loss, certain diseases, or other physiological stresses. This adaptive capability demonstrates the skeleton's role not only in current blood production, but also as a reserve capacity for emergency situations. The distribution of red and yellow marrow throughout your skeleton changes dramatically over the course of your lifetime, reflecting changing demands for blood production and the body's overall metabolic needs. At birth, nearly all of your bone marrow is red and actively producing blood cells to support rapid growth and development. The high metabolic demands of infancy and childhood require enormous numbers of new blood cells to support tissue growth, immune development, and the replacement of cells lost through normal turnover. As you mature, the pattern of marrow distribution shifts significantly. Yellow marrow gradually replaces red marrow in the long bones of your arms and legs, starting from the extremities and progressing toward the body's center. By adulthood, red marrow is primarily confined to the flat bones of your skull, ribs, sternum, and pelvis, along with the vertebrae and the proximal ends of the femur and humerus. This distribution pattern concentrates blood production in areas where the skeleton can provide maximum protection while maintaining the reserve capacity for increased production when needed. The microenvironment within red bone marrow represents one of the most sophisticated cellular ecosystems in your body. This environment, known as the hematopoietic niche, consists of various cell types working together to support blood cell development. Stromal cells provide structural support and secrete growth factors that regulate stem cell behavior. Endothelial cells line the blood vessels that permeate the marrow, facilitating the release of mature blood cells into circulation. Macrophages help maintain the marrow environment by removing cellular debris and providing regulatory signals. At the heart of hematopoiesis lie the hematopoietic stem cells, remarkable cells capable of both self-renewal and differentiation into all types of blood cells. These stem cells exist in a state of carefully regulated balance, with some maintaining their stem cell characteristics, while others differentiate into the various blood cell lineages. The decision between self-renewal and differentiation is controlled by complex molecular signals that respond to the body's changing needs for different types of blood cells. The process of blood cell development follows a hierarchical pattern, with stem cells giving rise to increasingly specialized progenitor cells that eventually mature into the functional blood cells found in circulation. This developmental cascade allows for precise control of blood cell production, with multiple checkpoints ensuring that only healthy, fully functional cells are released into the bloodstream. Red blood cell production, or erythropoiesis, represents the most numerically significant output of the bone marrow. These cells, which carry oxygen from your lungs to tissues throughout your body, have a lifespan of approximately 120 days and must be continuously replaced. The kidney hormone erythropoietin regulates red blood cell production, increasing when oxygen levels in the blood decrease and decreasing when oxygen levels are adequate. This feedback mechanism ensures that red blood cell production matches the body's oxygen carrying needs. Deep within the hollow spaces of your bones operates one of the most remarkable manufacturing facilities in your body, the bone marrow, a soft tissue that produces the billions of blood cells required to sustain life. As you rest here peacefully, this hidden factory works tirelessly, generating approximately 200 billion red blood cells, 10 billion white blood cells, and 400 billion platelets every single day. This production occurs within the protected confines of your skeleton, where specialized stem cells give rise to all the cellular components of your blood through an intricate process known as hematopoiesis. The bone marrow exists in two distinct forms, each serving different functions and occupying different locations within your skeleton. Red bone marrow, the active blood producing tissue, appears red due to its rich blood supply and high concentration of developing red blood cells. This marrow contains the stem cells and supporting structures necessary for blood cell production, creating a microenvironment perfectly suited for the complex processes of cellular development and differentiation. Yellow bone marrow, in contrast, consists primarily of fat cells and serves as an energy reserve rather than an active site of blood production. This marrow can reconvert to red marrow if the body's demand for blood cells increases dramatically, such as during severe blood loss, certain diseases, or other physiological stresses. This adaptive capability demonstrates the skeleton's role not only in current blood production, but also as a reserve capacity for emergency situations. The distribution of red and yellow marrow throughout your skeleton changes dramatically over the course of your lifetime, reflecting changing demands for blood production and the body's overall metabolic needs. At birth, nearly all of your bone marrow is red and actively producing blood cells to support rapid growth and development. The high metabolic demands of infancy and childhood require enormous numbers of new blood cells to support tissue growth, immune development, and the replacement of cells lost through normal turnover. As you mature, the pattern of marrow distribution shifts significantly. Yellow marrow gradually replaces red marrow in the long bones of your arms and legs, starting from the extremities and progressing toward the body's center. By adulthood, red marrow is primarily confined to the flat bones of your skull, ribs, sternum, and pelvis, along with the vertebrae and the proximal ends of the femur and humerus. This distribution pattern concentrates blood production in areas where the skeleton can provide maximum protection while maintaining the reserve capacity for increased production when needed. The microenvironment within red bone marrow represents one of the most sophisticated cellular ecosystems in your body. This environment, known as the hematopoietic niche, consists of various cell types working together to support blood cell development. Stromal cells provide structural support and secrete growth factors that regulate stem cell behavior. Endothelial cells line the blood vessels that permeate the marrow, facilitating the release of mature blood cells into circulation. Macrophages help maintain the marrow environment by removing cellular debris and providing regulatory signals. At the heart of hematopoiesis lie the hematopoietic stem cells, remarkable cells capable of both self-renewal and differentiation into all types of blood cells. These stem cells exist in a state of carefully regulated balance, with some maintaining their stem cell characteristics, while others differentiate into the various blood cell lineages. The decision between self renewal and differentiation is controlled by complex molecular signals that respond to the body's changing needs for different types of blood cells. The process of blood cell development follows a hierarchical pattern, with stem cells giving rise to increasingly specialized progenitor cells that eventually mature into the functional blood cells found in circulation. This developmental cascade allows for precise control of blood cell production, with multiple checkpoints ensuring that only healthy, fully functional cells are released into the bloodstream. Red blood cell production, or erythropoiesis, represents the most numerically significant output of the bone marrow. These cells, which carry oxygen from your lungs to tissues throughout your body, have a lifespan of approximately 120 days and must be continuously replaced. The kidney hormone erythropoietin regulates red blood cell production, increasing when oxygen levels in the blood decrease and decreasing when oxygen levels are adequate. This feedback mechanism ensures that red blood cell production matches the body's oxygen carrying needs. Structure and strength following injury. A properly healed bone fracture can actually become stronger than the original tissue, with the repair site often indistinguishable from the surrounding bone. This remarkable healing capability depends on the coordinated activities of multiple cell types, the adequate supply of nutrients and oxygen, and the precise regulation of inflammatory and repair processes. The process of bone healing follows a predictable sequence of events that begins immediately after injury and can continue for months or even years, depending on the severity and location of the damage. This healing cascade involves four overlapping phases: hematoma formation, soft callus formation, hard callus formation, and bone remodeling. Each phase serves specific functions in restoring bone integrity and strength. The initial response to bone injury involves the formation of a hematoma, a blood clot that forms around the fracture site within hours of injury. This hematoma serves multiple functions beyond simple bleeding control. The clotted blood provides a scaffold for the migration of inflammatory cells and healing factors, while the inflammatory response triggered by tissue damage initiates the complex cascade of healing processes. The inflammatory phase of bone healing involves the recruitment of various cell types to the injury site, including neutrophils, macrophages, and other immune cells that clean up damaged tissue and release chemical signals that coordinate the healing response. This inflammatory response, while sometimes uncomfortable, is essential for proper healing and helps prevent infection while preparing the injury site for repair. Following hematoma formation, the soft callus phase begins as specialized cells migrate to the fracture site and begin producing a fibrocartilaginous matrix that bridges the gap between bone ends. This soft callus consists primarily of cartilage and fibrous connective tissue, providing initial stability to the fracture site while serving as a template for subsequent bone formation. The soft callus typically reaches maximum size within 2 to 3 weeks after injury. The final phase of bone healing involves the remodeling of the callus to restore the bone's original shape and internal architecture. This remodeling process can continue for years after the initial injury, with osteoclasts removing excess callus material, while osteoblasts deposit new bone tissue along lines of mechanical stress. The end result is often a bone that is structurally and functionally identical to the original tissue. The success of bone healing depends on several critical factors that must be present for optimal repair. Adequate blood supply is essential, as healing bone tissue has enormous metabolic demands and requires continuous delivery of nutrients, oxygen, and cellular components. Fractures in areas with poor blood supply, such as certain regions of the femoral neck or scaphoid bone in the wrist, may heal slowly or fail to heal entirely. Mechanical stability plays a crucial role in bone healing, with appropriate immobilization allowing the formation of stable callus, while excessive movement can disrupt healing processes. However, complete immobilization is not always optimal. Controlled mechanical loading can actually stimulate bone healing by promoting blood flow and cellular activity. The principle of relative stability recognizes that some degree of mechanical stimulation enhances healing while excessive motion impairs it. Nutritional factors significantly influence bone healing, with adequate protein intake essential for the production of collagen matrix and other bone proteins. Vitamin C is required for collagen synthesis, while vitamin D and calcium are necessary for proper mineralization of the healing tissue. Vitamin K plays important roles in bone protein synthesis, and various trace minerals contribute to optimal healing processes. Age affects bone healing in several ways, with younger individuals typically healing faster and more completely than older adults. The reduced regenerative capacity of aging tissues, decreased blood supply, and altered hormonal status all contribute to slower healing in older individuals. However, bones retain considerable healing capacity even in advanced age, though the process may require more time and optimal conditions. The continuous process of bone remodeling that occurs throughout life serves multiple functions beyond simple maintenance. This ongoing cellular activity allows bones to adapt their architecture to changing mechanical demands, repair microscopic damage before it can propagate into fractures, and regulate mineral homeostasis as discussed in previous chapters. Bone remodeling occurs through the coordinated activities of bone multicellular units, BMUs, which consist of osteoclasts, osteoblasts, and supporting cells that work together to remove old bone tissue and replace it with new. These BMUs operate continuously throughout the skeleton, with the entire adult skeleton being completely replaced approximately every 10 years through this remodeling process. The regulation of bone remodeling involves complex interactions between mechanical signals, hormonal influences, and local cellular factors. Mechanical loading stimulates bone formation while reducing bone resorption, allowing bones to strengthen in response to increased demands. Conversely, reduced loading leads to bone loss as the skeleton adapts to decreased mechanical requirements. Hormonal regulation of bone remodeling involves many of the same factors that control mineral homeostasis, including parathyroid hormone, vitamin D, and calcitonin. Additionally, sex hormones play crucial roles in maintaining the balance between bone formation and resorption, with estrogen deficiency leading to accelerated bone loss due to increased remodeling activity. Local factors within bone tissue also regulate remodeling, including growth factors released during bone resorption, mechanical stress sensors within bone cells, and inflammatory mediators that respond to tissue damage. This local regulation allows different regions of the skeleton to adapt independently to their specific mechanical and metabolic demands. The clinical implications of bone healing and remodeling extend far beyond simple fracture repair. Understanding these processes has led to therapeutic approaches that enhance healing, prevent complications, and maintain skeletal health throughout life. Treatments that optimize blood supply, provide appropriate mechanical stimulation, and ensure adequate nutrition can significantly improve healing outcomes. The remarkable processes of bone healing and remodeling demonstrate the dynamic nature of skeletal tissue and its sophisticated adaptive capabilities. From the initial inflammatory response to a fracture through the years long remodeling that restores optimal bone architecture, these processes represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement that enable bones to maintain their strength and functionality despite the inevitable wear and damage of daily life. This understanding of bones' regenerative capabilities provides the foundation for exploring the factors that can compromise this system and the strategies available for maintaining optimal bone health throughout life. The strength and resilience that characterize healthy bones throughout most of life can, under certain circumstances, become compromised by age, disease, or lifestyle factors that disrupt the delicate balance of bone formation and resorption. As you rest here in the quiet evening, understanding these potential threats to skeletal health becomes crucial for maintaining the remarkable framework that supports you. The conditions that can weaken bones represent disruptions in the sophisticated biological systems we have explored, reminding us that bone health requires active attention and care throughout life. Osteoporosis stands as perhaps the most significant threat to skeletal health in modern society, affecting millions of individuals worldwide and representing a condition where bone density decreases to levels that substantially increase fracture risk. This silent disease progresses gradually over years or decades, often without symptoms until a fracture occurs. The term osteoporosis literally means porous bone, reflecting the thinning of bone tissue and the enlargement of spaces within the bone's internal architecture. The development of osteoporosis reflects an imbalance in bone remodeling, where bone resorption consistently exceeds bone formation over extended periods. This imbalance can result from various factors, including hormonal changes, nutritional deficiencies, reduced physical activity, certain medications, and genetic predisposition. The cumulative effect is a gradual weakening of bone structure that may not become apparent until relatively minor trauma results in fracture. The relationship between peak bone mass and osteoporosis risk illustrates the long-term nature of bone health. Peak bone mass, typically achieved in the third decade of life, represents the maximum bone density an individual will attain. Individuals who achieve higher peak bone mass have greater reserves to draw upon as age-related bone loss progresses, potentially delaying the onset of osteoporosis by years or decades. Testosterone deficiency in men can similarly affect bone health, though the decline typically occurs more gradually than the abrupt changes seen with female menopause. Men with significantly low testosterone levels may experience accelerated bone loss, highlighting the importance of sex hormones in maintaining skeletal integrity in both sexes. Secondary osteoporosis results from conditions or medications that interfere with bone metabolism rather than from the primary age-related processes. Chronic inflammatory conditions, such as rheumatoid arthritis, can promote bone loss through the effects. The maintenance of optimal bone health throughout life requires a comprehensive understanding of the factors that support skeletal integrity and the implementation of evidence-based strategies that work synergistically to preserve and enhance bone strength. As you rest here peacefully, your bones continue their endless cycle of renewal and adaptation, responding to the nutritional, mechanical, and hormonal signals you provide through your daily choices. The nurturing of your skeletal foundation represents an investment in your long term mobility, independence, and quality of life. Nutritional support for bone health extends far beyond the commonly emphasized calcium and vitamin D, encompassing a complex array of nutrients that work together to support bone formation, mineralization, and maintenance. While calcium undoubtedly plays a crucial role as the primary mineral component of bone tissue, its utilization depends on the presence of numerous cofactors and the overall nutritional status of the individual. Calcium requirements vary throughout life, with periods of rapid growth, pregnancy, lactation, and aging representing times of increased need. However, simply consuming large amounts of calcium does not guarantee optimal bone health if other essential nutrients are lacking or if absorption is impaired. The efficiency of calcium absorption from the intestine decreases with age, making adequate vitamin D status increasingly important for maintaining calcium balance. The sources of dietary calcium influence its bioavailability, with dairy products traditionally considered excellent sources due to their high calcium content and good absorption rates. However, many plant based foods also provide well absorbed calcium, including leafy green vegetables, almonds, sardines with bones, and fortified foods. The key lies not just in calcium content, but in the overall dietary pattern that supports calcium absorption and utilization. Vitamin D's role in bone health encompasses both its classical effects on calcium metabolism and newly discovered functions in bone cell biology. The active form of vitamin D directly influences osteoblast and osteoclast function, regulating bone formation and resorption beyond its effects on calcium absorption. Adequate vitamin D status requires either sufficient sun exposure to enable skin synthesis or dietary divided by supplemental sources, particularly in regions with limited sunlight. The complexity of vitamin D metabolism, involving the skin, liver, and kidneys, creates multiple points where the system can be disrupted. Factors such as skin pigmentation, sunscreen use, geographic latitude, season, age, and kidney function all influence vitamin D status. Many individuals, particularly older adults and those with limited sun exposure, may benefit from vitamin D supplementation to maintain optimal levels. Protein intake plays a fundamental role in bone health through its contribution to bone matrix formation and its effects on calcium metabolism. The organic matrix of bone consists primarily of collagen, a protein that requires adequate amino acid availability for synthesis. Additionally, protein intake influences the production of insulin like growth factor 1, a hormone that promotes bone formation. The relationship between protein intake and bone health demonstrates the importance of balance, as both inadequate and excessive protein intake may have negative effects. Very low protein intake can impair bone matrix formation, while extremely high protein intake may increase calcium excretion. However, within normal dietary ranges, adequate protein intake supports bone health, particularly when combined with sufficient calcium and vitamin D. Vitamin K contributes to bone health through its role in the synthesis of osteocalcin and other bone matrix proteins. This vitamin exists in two main forms: K1, found primarily in leafy green vegetables, and K2, found in fermented foods and produced by intestinal bacteria. Both forms contribute to bone health, though K2 may be particularly important for bone mineralization. Physical activity represents one of the most powerful tools for building and maintaining bone strength throughout life. The mechanical loading of bones during exercise stimulates bone formation and helps maintain bone density, following the principle that bones adapt to the forces placed upon them. However, not all types of exercise provide equal benefits for bone health. Weight bearing exercises, where bones support body weight against gravity, provide the most effective stimulus for bone formation. Activities such as walking, jogging, dancing, and stair climbing create the ground reaction forces that stimulate bone cells. The impact component of these activities appears particularly important, with higher impact activities generally providing greater bone benefits than low impact activities. Resistance training offers unique benefits for bone health by creating muscle contractions that pull on bones at their attachment sites. This type of mechanical loading can be precisely targeted to specific skeletal sites and can be progressively increased over time. The combination of weight bearing and resistance exercises appears to provide optimal benefits for bone health. The timing of exercise intervention influences its effectiveness for bone health. Exercise during childhood and adolescence, when bones are growing rapidly, can significantly enhance peak bone mass achievement. Exercise initiated later in life can help maintain existing bone density and may slow age related bone loss, though the gains may be more modest than those achieved during the growing years. The intensity, frequency, and duration of exercise all influence its effects on bone health. Moderate to vigorous intensity activities appear most beneficial, with the recommendation that bone loading activities be performed on most days of the week. However, excessive exercise that leads to hormonal disruption or inadequate energy availability can negatively affect bone health, particularly in young athletes. Lifestyle factors beyond nutrition and exercise significantly influence bone health throughout life. Smoking has consistently been associated with increased bone loss and fracture risk through multiple mechanisms, including direct toxic effects on bone cells, impaired calcium absorption, and altered hormone metabolism. The cessation of smoking can help slow bone loss and reduce fracture risk. Excessive alcohol consumption can impair bone formation and increase bone resorption, leading to decreased bone density and increased fracture risk. However, light to moderate alcohol consumption may not significantly affect bone health, and some studies have suggested possible benefits, though this remains controversial. The maintenance of healthy body weight supports bone health, though the relationship is complex. While adequate body weight provides mechanical loading that stimulates bone formation, excessive weight can increase fracture risk through increased fall risk and altered biomechanics. Conversely, being significantly underweight, particularly if associated with hormonal disruption, can impair bone health. Sleep quality and duration may influence bone health through their effects on growth hormone secretion and overall metabolic function. Growth hormone, which is released primarily during deep sleep, plays important roles in bone formation and repair. Chronic sleep disruption may therefore indirectly affect bone health. Stress management may contribute to bone health through its effects on cortisol levels and overall health behaviors. Chronic psychological stress can lead to elevated cortisol levels, which can impair bone formation and increase bone resorption. Additionally, stress may negatively affect sleep, nutrition, and exercise habits that support bone health. The concept of bone health across the lifespan emphasizes the importance of age appropriate interventions. During childhood and adolescence, the focus should be on optimizing peak bone mass through adequate nutrition, particularly calcium and vitamin D, combined with regular physical activity. This period represents a crucial window for building skeletal reserves that will serve throughout life. During the adult years, the maintenance of bone health becomes paramount with continued attention to nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle factors that support bone density. The prevention of rapid bone loss becomes increasingly important, particularly around the time of menopause in women. In later life, the prevention of falls becomes as important as the maintenance of bone strength in preventing fractures. Balance training, vision correction, medication review, and home safety modifications all contribute to fracture prevention by reducing fall risk. The integration of multiple bone health strategies appears most effective, with nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle modifications working synergistically to support skeletal integrity. No single intervention is likely to be as effective as a comprehensive approach that addresses all modifiable risk factors for poor bone health. Understanding the evidence base for bone health interventions helps guide decision making about specific strategies. While some interventions have strong research support, others may have limited evidence or may be beneficial only for specific populations. The individualization of bone health strategies based on personal risk factors, preferences, and circumstances optimizes the likelihood of long term success. Your skeleton possesses a remarkable capacity for adaptation that extends far beyond the basic responses to daily activities, demonstrating an extraordinary ability to modify its structure and function in response to extreme environments, specialized demands, and changing circumstances throughout life. As you rest here in the quiet evening, this adaptable framework continues its subtle adjustments to the mechanical and physiological demands of your existence, embodying millions of years of evolutionary refinement that has created one of nature's most responsive structural systems. The fundamental principle underlying skeletal adaptation lies in the dynamic relationship between mechanical loading and bone architecture, but this relationship extends into realms that challenge our understanding of biological limits. When astronauts venture into the microgravity environment of space, their skeletons undergo rapid and dramatic changes that reveal both the dependence of bone tissue on gravitational loading and its remarkable capacity for adaptation to entirely novel environmental conditions. In the absence of gravity's constant mechanical stimulus, astronauts experience bone loss at rates far exceeding those seen in any terrestrial condition. Weight bearing bones, particularly those of the hips and spine, can lose 1 to 2% of their density per month during spaceflight, a rate that would be catastrophic if sustained over years. This rapid adaptation to reduced loading demonstrates the skeleton's sensitivity to mechanical stimuli and its ability to rapidly alter its structure when those stimuli are removed. The specific pattern of bone loss in microgravity reveals important insights about how different bones respond to altered mechanical environments. The bones that normally bear the greatest loads during terrestrial life show the most dramatic losses, while bones that are primarily used for muscle attachment may be less affected. This selective adaptation suggests that bones distinguish between different types of mechanical stimuli and respond accordingly. The cellular mechanisms underlying microgravity induced bone loss involve alterations in both bone formation and resorption, with evidence suggesting that the normal coupling between these processes may be disrupted. Osteoblast function appears to be particularly sensitive to mechanical unloading, with reduced bone formation being a major contributor to the net bone loss observed in space. Countermeasure strategies developed for space exploration have provided valuable insights into the requirements for maintaining bone health under extreme conditions. Resistance exercise protocols, pharmacological interventions, and artificial gravity systems all represent approaches to maintaining skeletal integrity when natural gravitational loading is absent. The varying success of these interventions has enhanced our understanding of the specific mechanical requirements for bone health. At the opposite extreme from microgravity, individuals who subject their skeletons to extraordinary mechanical demands provide insights into the upper limits of bone adaptation. Elite athletes in sports requiring exceptional bone loading demonstrate adaptations that can result in bone densities well above normal population ranges, with some studies documenting increases of 20–30% above age matched controls. Gymnasts who begin intensive training at young ages and subject their bones to high impact forces from multiple directions often develop remarkably dense bone tissue that persists long after their competitive careers end. The diverse loading patterns of gymnastics create comprehensive skeletal adaptations that provide protection against fractures throughout life, demonstrating the long-term benefits of optimal bone loading during the critical period of skeletal development. Weightlifters and other strength athletes show adaptations that are often site-specific, with the greatest increases in bone density occurring in regions subjected to the highest forces. The spine and hips of powerlifters, for example, may show remarkable increases in bone density that reflect the enormous forces generated during competitive lifting. These adaptations demonstrate the skeleton's ability to strengthen itself in response to progressive loading. The temporal aspects of skeletal adaptation reveal important principles about the rate and extent of possible changes. While bone loss can occur relatively rapidly when mechanical stimuli are removed, bone gain typically requires months to years of consistent loading to produce significant increases in density or strength. This asymmetry in adaptation rates reflects the biological costs of bone formation versus resorption and has important implications for training and rehabilitation programs. The concept of muscle bone unit adaptation recognizes that skeletal adaptations occur in coordination with changes in the muscular system. Muscles and bones adapt together to meet mechanical demands, with increases in muscle strength typically accompanied by increases in bone density at sites where those muscles attach. This coordinated adaptation ensures that the skeleton can handle the forces generated by its associated musculature. Environmental factors beyond mechanical loading influence skeletal adaptation with altitude, temperature, and other physical stressors, potentially affecting bone metabolism. High altitude environments may influence bone health through effects on calcium metabolism, hormone production, and physical activity levels, though the specific mechanisms and clinical significance of these effects remain areas of active research. Occupational factors have historically created distinctive patterns of skeletal adaptation that reflect the specific physical demands of different professions. Archaeological studies of historical populations reveal skeletal adaptations that can be linked to specific occupational activities, from the enlarged muscle attachment sites of blacksmiths to the distinctive wear patterns of individuals who performed repetitive tasks. Modern occupational factors may create different adaptation patterns, with sedentary work environments potentially contributing to reduced bone density due to decreased mechanical loading. Conversely, occupations requiring physical labor may promote bone health through their loading effects, though this must be balanced against potential injury risks from excessive or inappropriate loading. Cultural and lifestyle factors influence skeletal adaptation through their effects on activity patterns, nutrition, and environmental exposures. Traditional cultures with high levels of physical activity throughout life often show maintenance of bone density at ages where industrialized populations experience significant bone loss, highlighting the importance of lifelong mechanical loading for skeletal health. The genetic basis of skeletal adaptation involves complex interactions between inherited factors that influence baseline bone density, the magnitude of response to mechanical loading, and the rate of adaptation to changing conditions. Some individuals appear to be high responders to exercise interventions, showing dramatic improvements in bone density, while others may show more modest responses despite similar interventions. Twin studies have provided insights into the relative contributions of genetic and environmental factors to skeletal adaptation, suggesting that while genetic factors strongly influence baseline bone density, environmental factors such as exercise can significantly modify genetic predisposition. This research supports the concept that skeletal health is influenced by both nature and nurture. Epigenetic mechanisms may mediate some aspects of skeletal adaptation by modifying gene expression in response to environmental stimuli. Mechanical loading, nutritional factors, and other environmental influences may alter the expression of genes involved in bone metabolism without changing the underlying DNA sequence, potentially creating adaptations that could be maintained over extended periods. The study of skeletal adaptation across different populations has revealed fascinating insights into human diversity and adaptation. Populations that have lived in specific environments for many generations may show skeletal features that reflect adaptation to those environments, from the robust bones of populations with high physical activity levels to the distinctive features associated with specific climatic adaptations. Modern lifestyle changes are creating new patterns of skeletal adaptation that may have long-term consequences for population health. The combination of reduced physical activity, altered nutrition, and increased longevity is creating challenges for skeletal health that may require new approaches to prevention and treatment. Technological advances are creating new opportunities to study and potentially enhance skeletal adaptation. Devices that can precisely control mechanical loading, monitor bone response in real time, and provide feedback about optimal exercise prescriptions may enable more effective interventions for promoting skeletal health. The future of skeletal adaptation research holds promise for understanding and harnessing the skeleton's remarkable adaptability for therapeutic purposes. From developing more effective exercise prescriptions to creating novel mechanical interventions, the principles of skeletal adaptation may provide new approaches to preventing and treating bone disease. Understanding skeletal adaptation emphasizes the remarkable plasticity of bone tissue and its capacity to respond to changing demands throughout life. This adaptability represents both an opportunity and a responsibility, as our choices regarding physical activity, nutrition, and lifestyle directly influence the strength and resilience of our skeletal framework for years or decades to come. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through the remarkable world of your skeletal system, it becomes clear that the relationship between you and your bones extends far beyond simple structural support to encompass a dynamic, lifelong partnership that adapts, grows, and evolves throughout every phase of your existence. Here, in the peaceful quiet of this evening, Your skeleton continues its ceaseless work not merely as a passive framework, but as an active participant in your health, vitality, and capability. This partnership began before you were even born, when the first cartilaginous templates of your future bones began forming in the womb. From those earliest moments, your skeleton has been responding to signals from your developing body, creating the framework that would support your first breath, your first movements, and every subsequent moment of your life. The bones that emerged from that developmental process were not fixed, unchanging structures, but living tissues capable of growth, adaptation, and repair. Throughout your childhood and adolescence, this skeletal partnership manifested in the remarkable process of growth and development. Your bones lengthened and strengthened in response to the forces you placed upon them, adapting their architecture to meet the changing demands of your growing body. Every step you took, every playground activity, every sport you played contributed to the development of a skeleton uniquely suited to your individual pattern of movement and activity. The transition to adulthood marked a shift in this partnership from growth to maintenance and optimization. Your bones achieved their peak density and strength, representing the culmination of decades of careful construction and refinement. This peak bone mass became your skeletal inheritance, the foundation upon which your bones would draw for the rest of your life. The lifestyle choices you made during these years, your nutrition, exercise habits, and overall health behaviors became investments in your future skeletal well-being. As you've moved through your adult years, your skeletal partnership has continued to evolve, with your bones constantly remodeling themselves in response to your activities and needs. This ongoing process of renewal and repair has allowed your skeleton to maintain its strength and functionality despite the inevitable wear and damage of daily life. The remarkable fact that your entire skeleton replaces itself approximately every 10 years means that you have, quite literally, built new bones multiple times throughout your life. The minerals stored within your bones have served as a chemical buffer, helping to maintain the precise ionic balance necessary for proper cellular function throughout your body. Every heartbeat, every muscle contraction, every nerve impulse has depended upon the calcium and other minerals that your skeleton has carefully regulated and released as needed. This chemical partnership has operated largely below the level of conscious awareness, yet it has been essential for your survival and function. Your bone marrow has participated in this partnership by producing the billions of blood cells required to sustain life, creating the red cells that carry oxygen, the white cells that defend against infection, and the platelets that prevent excessive bleeding. This hematopoietic function has provided a constant supply of fresh blood cells to replace those lost through normal turnover and to increase production during times of stress or illness. The protective functions of your skeleton have shielded your most vital organs from the inevitable bumps, falls, and impacts of an active life. Your skull has safeguarded your brain, your ribs have protected your heart and lungs, and your spine has created a secure conduit for your spinal cord. This protective partnership has operated continuously, often preventing injuries that might otherwise have been catastrophic. The mechanical partnership between your skeleton and muscles has enabled the extraordinary range of movements that define human capability. From the delicate manipulation required for intricate tasks to the powerful movements needed for athletic performance, your bones have served as the levers and fulcrums that transform muscle contractions into purposeful action. This mechanical system has allowed you to interact with your environment in ways that would be impossible without the sophisticated engineering of your skeletal system. Your skeletal partnership has demonstrated remarkable adaptability throughout your life, responding to changes in your activity level, health status, and environmental demands. When you've challenged your bones with increased activity, they have responded by becoming stronger and more resilient. When circumstances have required periods of reduced activity, they have adapted while maintaining their essential functions as much as possible. The aging process has brought new dimensions to this skeletal partnership, with gradual changes in bone density and architecture reflecting the accumulated effects of decades of use and the changing hormonal and metabolic environment of advancing years. Yet, even in later life, your bones retain considerable capacity for adaptation and repair, responding positively to appropriate nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle modifications. Understanding this partnership emphasizes the active role you play in determining your skeletal health throughout life. The daily choices you make regarding nutrition, physical activity, and overall health behaviors directly influence the strength, resilience, and longevity of your skeletal system. This represents both an opportunity and a responsibility. The opportunity to positively influence your skeletal health through informed choices, and the responsibility to provide your bones with the conditions they need to serve you well. The nutritional partnership with your skeleton requires consistent attention to the multiple nutrients that support bone health. While calcium and vitamin D receive the most attention, the full spectrum of bone supporting nutrients, protein, magnesium, vitamin K, and others all contribute to optimal skeletal function. This nutritional partnership extends beyond simple supplementation to encompass overall dietary patterns that support bone health within the context of general wellness. The mechanical partnership with your skeleton requires regular physical activity that provides the loading stimuli necessary to maintain bone strength. This need not involve extreme exercise or athletic pursuits, but it does require consistent weight bearing and muscle strengthening activities that challenge your bones to adapt and maintain their structural integrity. The principle of use it or lose it applies perhaps nowhere more clearly than to skeletal health. The hormonal aspects of this partnership become particularly important during periods of significant hormonal change, such as menopause in women or andropause in men. Understanding these changes and taking appropriate steps to mitigate their effects on bone health can help maintain skeletal integrity during these transitional periods. Emerging research continues to reveal new aspects of this skeletal partnership, from the endocrine functions of bone tissue to the complex molecular mechanisms that regulate bone cell function. Bones are now recognized not merely as structural elements, but as active endocrine organs that influence metabolism throughout the body. This expanding understanding of skeletal biology continues to reveal new opportunities for maintaining and enhancing bone health. The future of your skeletal partnership holds promise for even better understanding and support of bone health throughout life. Advances in bone biology, biomechanics, and therapeutic interventions may provide new tools for preventing bone disease and maintaining skeletal function well into advanced age. The principles of precision medicine may eventually allow for individualized approaches to bone health based on genetic factors, lifestyle considerations, and personal risk profiles. Technology may enhance this partnership through devices that monitor bone health in real time, provide feedback about optimal exercise intensities, or deliver targeted interventions to promote bone formation and prevent bone loss. Regenerative medicine approaches may eventually provide new options for repairing damaged bone tissue and restoring function after injury or disease. As you consider this lifelong partnership with your skeletal system, the remarkable nature of this relationship becomes clear. Your bones are not merely the scaffolding that holds you upright, but active, responsive partners in your health and well being. They have grown with you, adapted to your needs, protected your vital organs, produced your blood cells, and enabled your movements throughout your life. This partnership will continue for as long as you live, with your bones standing ready to respond to whatever challenges and opportunities lie ahead. By understanding the nature of this relationship and taking active steps to support your skeletal health, you can help ensure that this partnership remains strong and beneficial throughout all the years to come. The quiet strength of your skeleton, supporting you now as you rest and ready to carry you through tomorrow's activities, represents one of nature's most remarkable engineering achievements. In caring for your bones, you are investing in your future mobility, independence, and quality of life, nurturing a partnership that will, in return, continue to serve and support you through all the adventures and challenges that await.